Krug Show back with you. First day of the combine. Dieter is back. He's been gone for a couple weeks. He's back for the Thursday night show. We're of course brought to you by Mancini's. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. And our friends at Sharp Corners will tell you more about all of it as we talk combine, Niners offseason, Debo, Ayuk, Tim Kawakami's got more stories. There's a lot to get to. Who do the Niners like? We have definitive direction for the 49ers in free agency. We're going to hit it all right now. Don't miss it. Join us. Don't miss a second. Welcome to the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. If you're like, I've never heard of those spots, I don't live in California. They're in Northern California. And welcome to the Krug Show. I'm Larry Krueger. He's Dieter Kurtenbach. And hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. It is Thursday, February the 27th. I'm in a great mood. Why? Because day one of the combine. And
Larry's all hot and bothered. He watched a bunch of grown men run around in spandex.
Exactly. I see spandex. Day one of the combine is really a great day normally. But you know what? This was a very important day for the 49ers because they have work to do on their defensive front seven. And we're going to talk all about it. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. We're brought to you by check them out, get the brisket, talk to Damon and Mary, tell them I sent you. We're brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California. Our great friend Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. Give him a call for all your sports cards and collectible needs. And Mancini Sleep World is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. If you need a bed, anybody who needs a bed and wants to save 10%, listen up, because Mancini's offers a 120-night guarantee with a range of brands and price points. It's a great bed that I've got from Mancini's. You get free next-day delivery. You order it today, you're sleeping on it tomorrow. Click the link below. Go to sleepworld.com and find a bed that works for you and your family, whether you shop online or you visit in-store at any of the Mancini's locations. Just type in the code KRUG10 or have the salesperson do it, KRUG10. And you're getting 10% off your mattress purchase. That's Krug10 to get 10% off in any of Mancini's locations or online at sleepworld.com. So if you need a bed, tell them that Krug sent you. Use that code Krug10. Save that 10%, and maybe that could be a significant amount of money.
Yes,
all
right.
Sir. The Combine. Let's get into this. But before we do, we titled the stream 49ers linked to multiple edge rushers. Who's coming to San Francisco? Okay, so this is kind of one of the topics of the day. And, you know, it's funny. This has been kind of a busy couple days, believe it or not, for the 49ers topic-wise. Tim Kawakami in the Standard, or possibly on X, says the 49ers are likely to be a destination for a big-name defensive lineman that's available in trade or, you know, on the free agent market, or basically a cap casualty.
Right.
And immediately I'm thinking Myles Garrett. Mm-hmm. And immediately I'm thinking Trey Hendrickson. Mm-hmm. And immediately I'm thinking Max Crosby. Right. And immediately I'm thinking Joey Bosa. And then Harold Landry got told that he's shopping, or he's, you know, out there available in a trade.
That's right.
And that's five pretty good veteran edge rushers. And sometimes the price tag, I remember a number of years ago now, Niners got Anquan Bolden. He had beaten them in the Super Bowl. They got him. He was still playing at a really high level, and they got him for a 6th-round pick. Right. And it was just like a steal of a trade. And I don't know, you know, if, you know, I know Garrett's not going to be a steal of a trade.
No.
But like if they don't want to pay Hendrickson, you know, I mean, that's going to be interesting. Crosby, I don't think is going anywhere. What do you think, though? I mean, this is I don't want to. Here's my thing. I love this defensive line draft. I know I could sit there and pick good guys if I just sat there and took them after another off the board, or even traded down for more picks and got a few of them. But there's only one Myles Garrett.
Right.
I don't know if I would put Joey Bosa anymore in that category, but man, that's an exciting, intriguing fit if Joey's healthy, because I think Joey and Nick together really would motivate one another. I think they'd be good for one another.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Dieter? I mean, you know this game well, and you know all these guys. I love Hendrickson. Hendrickson has got he might have the best mode. He might be the best combination of who's the most gettable at the cheapest price, who's got the most left. What do you think?
I'm not sure about the cheapest, right? Because the other thing you have to take into account with the trade is how much they're going to cost on the back end of it. And each one of these guys is a cap casualty or a trade possibility because they want more money, right? So like Myles Garrett, he doesn't want to sign a new contract with the Browns. The Browns might be willing to pay him what he's worth. He wants a new contract somewhere else. He's asking the Browns to trade him. So it's not just what's it going to cost to get Myles Garrett. It's what's it going to cost to keep Myles Garrett. It's what's it going to cost to keep Trey Hendrickson, which is why I think the Niners would be best served at this juncture. No problem at all. Go big game fishing. If you can find yourself some value, more power to you. But I don't think that there's going to be value with Hendrickson or Garrett, because not only would you be giving up what I would say is usable, if not, overtly significant draft capital to get those guys, which they have ample picks, but you don't want to be giving up, a third or a fourth round pick, a top 100 pick, to get a guy who now you also have to pay top of the line money to at the same time. Like, you'd be better off in that case just signing Khalil Mack, who is not a player on those guys' thresholds anymore, but is a very useful pass rusher, a good situational pass rusher, somebody who brings a lot of power, could easily play opposite Nick Bosa and be a really solid player. He's just a straight up free agent, right? You don't have to give up anything to get him, save for the that you got to pay him. So I'm with you. I think the Niners are in a really good position of power here. You and I are in agreement that the defensive tackle, I love this defensive line class in general. A lot of good edge rushers, a lot of good options available on the trade market. And there are going to be guys who fall through the cracks, right? I'm with you. I don't think Max Crosby's going anywhere, but Joey Bosa, very viable option. I think Harold Landry's a guy that the Niners have sort of kicked themselves for not getting when he was available in the draft out of BC, if I remember correctly. More of kind of a stand-up guy on the outside, but maybe if you want Bosa to play more of a power role, you can have that Landry. Clearly, they didn't have that big of an issue with that going with a Leonard Floyd this past year. Maybe he's somebody whose asking price doesn't get driven up because there's so many good options available and other teams get bogged down in those negotiations, and you're able to sort of swoop him up from the bottom. That would be the name of all of them I'd keep an eye on. But the Niners should be in a position at least to be as aggressive as they possibly can. There's no downside to this. Now, I do have to say everything revolves around Brock Purdy still, and we don't have resolution there. And the cost certainty of having Brock Purdy's contract on the books will go a long way to informing this conversation. So the sooner you can get that done, the better, so that you can get into these conversations. But they're going to have about $50 million to play with, 10 draft picks. At 11, they're in a position to trade down as well. They could go either direction, but I think that they have some real value there for a trade where they can even get more draft capital. But the one thing that I would say on all of this is, don't get older and slower. If you're going to bring in a Joey Bosa, that's fine. Don't make that the only thing you do. You still need to go and get a couple more defensive linemen, not just in free agency, some rotational guys like a Getor Gross-Matos type that you see some upside in who are younger, but also you need to use that draft capital on defensive linemen. You can't just say, oh, well, we got, if it's Myles Garrett, fine, but it's probably not. And everybody else is damaged goods to a certain degree because they've played in the NFL for a number of years. I don't think Trey Hendrickson is going to be in their price range because of the cost of both the contract and, of course, of the draft capital. And that double whammy, I don't think is something that they can totally invest in. They cannot go and get Joey Bosa and then be like, well, that problem's solved, because that was the same problem they had last year and the year before that and the year before that, which is they don't have, you can go out and get a great starting pitcher in baseball, get a top of the line guy. If his elbow goes because he's got a lot of wear and tear and he can't give you 200 innings, you better have a couple of good hands on the farm that you can call up and that you feel like can fill those innings. The Niners need to build depth more than anything else. I love the top end guys. It'd be a big coup. I can totally understand why there's interest from both parties with the agents and the players. And then, of course, with the Niners looking in that direction. But you got to get some serious depth because once they got even marginally into the rotation last year, it all fell apart at both tackle and especially at end.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I asked Kasarik in July, I'm like, hey, are you going to run these guys on the rotation that you've run them in the past? Because you have what looks to be a decent starting line, but not great depth. And he's like,
right.
no, we're gonna run everybody out there the way we always have, which is, we're gonna play them in a rotation. I mean, if you have 5 great offensive linemen, your 6th offensive lineman in theory, never play a down all year. It's probably not going to happen, but it's possible. On the defensive side of the ball, all of your guys play every week, and you need to have. It's not about starting, really. It's just about you got to have a bunch of guys that you got to have 10 guys that can all play. It doesn't matter exactly if they fit perfectly, as long as you got 10 guys that can really go, and they don't. They may have 5, and
that's a stretch.
I mean, okay, well, let's count. You got Nick Bosa. Right. Let me bust out the old Niner depth chart so we
Malik
can
Collins.
I mean, is Malik Collins going to be a cap casualty? Is Malik Collins going to be on the team? If he's not a cap casualty, yeah, Malik, I would say on the front, you got Nick, you got Malik Collins.
I'm not a big Elliott guy.
Is Leonard Floyd coming back? I mean,
a high threshold here. I mean, I know Elliott's coming back, but I'm not sure that I want Elliott to be anything more than the last guy on my depth chart there. Sam Aquanu,
I agree,
will come back. He's a
good
solid
depth.
Enough player, right? But you were out
Gross
there.
Matos maybe is cut, right? I don't know.
I like Gross Matos. I'm not. You
don't think he's a cap casualty?
I'm not going to shed a tear if they cut him.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see if they – and I mean, there's Robert Beal. There's Kalia Davis. I like Evan Anderson. Right. There's Drake Jackson. But if I really said who do I really like on this defense, I like Bosa.
Yeah.
I kind of like Sam Aquinu.
Right.
And I kind of like Evan Anderson.
That's where I'm at.
And everybody else is kind of just like, you know what? I'm not – they could be useful. Yeah. Floyd, Jordan Elliott. They could – Yatir Gross-Matos. They could be – useful. Drake Jackson if he got back to real form, but it sounds like it didn't sound promising listening to Lynch this week. But other than that, that's 3. That means you need 5 or 6 defensive linemen, and today was your day, man, because there's guys who can play that tested really well. And then there's guys that really can't play that tested really well. And then there's, guys who can play that didn't test very well. We're going to get into all of it. But today was a big day because not that you look at the combine for this, but you can, especially on the defensive line, you can see who keeps themselves in shape, who can move, who's an athlete, and the big guys today working out, there were a lot of really impressive performances, and we'll get into that. But ultimately, I think this is interesting. Can the Niners do both? Can they get a veteran edge rusher and keep all their picks and build through this, this very strong defensive line draft? Because, I'd love to have a Myles Garrett, but I also think they need 4 other defensive linemen out of this draft, even if they add Myles Garrett. So, let's get to the combine. Today was day 1. It's funny. You talk about this thing, there's always going to be guys who just light the thing up. And I thought a couple guys today. I mean, one,
like?
Well, I mean, I like him because he's a really good football player and he tested incredible. And that's Boston College pass rusher Donovan Ezeraku.
Yep.
And I may be butchering that. And
it's pretty close. I would never even dare. So I appreciate your gall there.
Well, one of his coaches, defensive coaches, was, left Boston College and came to the Niners, Brown, to be their cornerback coach. Mm-hmm. And he's given the Niners the inside dope on this guy. But if you don't know him, he's 6'2", 6'3". He's not the longest guy, but he's got the longest arms in the world. I mean, this guy's got the ridiculous long arms. and he uses them really well. He had 16 and a half sacks this year and 3 forced fumbles. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
He gave my man Membu the work when BC played at Mizzou. I mean, I'm a big Membu guy, and you watch that tape and you think that Membu shouldn't get drafted going up against this guy.
Well, 6'2 and a half, 248. He registered the top agility times among all the defensive line group today. He ran a 6.94 3-cone. He had a 4.19 second short shuttle. So 4.9 in the short shuttle, 4.19, 6.94 in the 3-cone, and those were both number one of anybody. Historic times for sure. And I mean they weren't historic times. But it was incredible.
They're very good numbers.
Yeah. So, the sample size was also limited. Only 20 defensive linemen performed in the agility drills. But Ezeraku was better than Baron Sorrell in the 3-cone and Braden Swinson in the short shuttle by each of those by more than 1/10 of a second. It wasn't that he beat these guys. He beat them badly. 419 to 433, 694 to 706. I mean, the all-time best mark for defensive ends in those drills is Bruce Irvin, who got a 6.70 3-cone, and Alex McAllister, who had a 4.0 second short shuttle. Alex McAllister did nothing. But this is Ezeraku, who was also really impressive at the Senior Bowl week for the Scouts, and obviously had a great career at BC. So kind of like, Dieter, a different position, but you'll see the comparison. Yeah. I compare Ezeraku a little bit to last year's Quinyon Mitchell, in that Quinyon was a great player at Toledo, and then he went to the All-Star games and he really shined out, really showed everybody he was like the best. Then he went to the combine, and he also kind of showed he was the best. And then you're looking at going, productive career, awesome at the All-Star games, awesome at the combine. First round pick, and he was great this year. Yeah. I think Ezeraku could be this for the Niners at their position of need. I know there are other guys that are bigger, and we can talk about other guys, but this guy's testing, his production, his arm length, his motor, his ability to get off blocks and be like a magnet to the quarterback. Go watch his film. He's fun. He's fun to watch. The question I would ask you is he too small at 248 for what Kasarik wants up front?
I think so. I really do. I think that he has to be at wide 9 in order to be fully effective, because when you watch the tape, he's not great in the phone booth. It's all that athleticism, which is prodigious as you've run through the numbers. I mean, it's really impressive. Yeah. But he needs space to operate, right? If you have a guard who can chip in on him, it doesn't look so great. And that's something that wasn't a real issue in college, because who was going to take that spot, basically standing up in the nickel effectively? Who was going to take that spot from him at BC, right? They had a bunch of bruisers, and then he was the flash to the substance that was in the middle. I really liked BC. I thought they were a really well-organized team, and there's going to be a lot of good pros on that team, even if a lot of them are going to be taken in the later rounds. 6'2", 248 is just too small for what the 49ers need. Now, if you're in a situation where you have good defensive tackles, where you feel like you have a decent enough rotation at strong side defensive end, that 5 technique, that 4-eye, then this is a great player for you. And he's going to have a very productive career, because, as you noted, the guy can just play football. Like, you don't get 16 sacks in the ACC by accident. Like, this guy can play. But the Niners also have to draft for spec here a little bit. And
let me ask you this. Could you see a Nolan? I mean, the Eagles on their front use Nolan Smith. He's 6'2", 238, but he ran sub 4.5. He ran in the 4.4s. He's really fast. This guy's 10 pounds heavier than that.
He doesn't play that
on
way,
kind of the same frame.
He doesn't play that
Um,
way. He plays as a speed rusher, and he is a
yeah,
speed rusher, and that's all
he's a
well and
great
good.
speed rusher.
That's all well and good, but that's not what the 49ers need unless they're trying to move Nick Bosa over into the less impactful role, which there's no indication that they want to do that because he's an all-around pass rusher and a run stopper and someone who can set the edge. The 49ers, it is not sexy. It is not glamorous. It is not fun like Ezeraku here. But the 49ers need someone who can set the goddamn edge on the opposite end because they were asking Diamador Lenore to do it far too often last year from the nickel because they didn't trust their defensive ends, whether it be Floyd or Gross Matos or whomever. I mean, sometimes with Aquano, he'd do it. Sometimes he wouldn't. They just need someone to be able to set an edge. And that's going to require some heft because you're going to be in tighter splits on that side of the line. I know they spread out a little bit. It's more of a 7 technique, but you are still getting yourself into position where you're crashing in and a guard can chip in on you. And Ezeraku is someone who just beats guys off the jump with explosion on the outside. If this team had truly reliable and outstanding defensive tackles that you felt like were going to hold the goddamn B gaps, then you could play around with the concept of 2 speed rushers or a Bosa, whatever he might be, and a true speed rusher on the other side. But they don't. And there's no way that they could possibly go into this season with the kind of confidence necessary to try such an experiment. So listen, I'm not going to totally pan the pick because I think this guy has the potential to be an outstanding player, but Ezeraku just doesn't seem like a fit for what the 49ers need, at least from my vantage point.
It's interesting. The other big news coming out of the combine, I'm not, I don't, the one thing I won't do is I won't sell something that I don't think is big, and I will sell something I do think is big. And
good policy.
I really believe that Tony Pauline is tied in with the Niners. He had the Garendo pick a month before the draft. He wasn't like, you know what, one of these shadowy kind of reports. It was like the 49ers like Garendo in the 3rd round in a month, and then it didn't happen. He went in the 4th round, so I guess he was wrong. But that's a pretty good pick, and he's pretty dialed. And he said 2 things this week that were incredibly interesting. One of them was that the 49ers, are looking in free agency at cornerback, wide receiver, and offensive line.
Yep, makes sense.
And we can talk about a couple of those names here in a minute. But the other one he said was that they really love Oluwafemi Oladejo, from UCLA, and that if he's there, they will take him in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting. So I watched a lot of the on-field drills. If you said to me, based on the Niners' needs, who do you think they could go to at 11? I could see them taking Mikael Williams from Georgia, just because he is exactly their prototype physical, what they're looking for opposite Nick Bosa. But I'm a little concerned about his whole feel. For as dominant as he is, I don't see consistent domination. And then there's 2 guys that both dominated today. And I want your thoughts on these 2 guys. It's James Pierce from Tennessee, and it's our good friend Shamar Stewart from A&M, and I'm a big A&M fan.
The bull rush.
So Pierce ran the fastest 40 of any of the defensive linemen today, 4.47. He ran on his first crack. He ran 4.50 with a 1.58 10-yard split. Second try 4.47 1.56. On the 10-yard split. He hit 23 miles per hour. He's been a blue chip guy. He was one of the best players in the country coming into the year, for sure. He's a blue chip guy, super blue chipper. He's 6'5", he's 245, he's really linear. He's like, that's his natural weight. Like, this guy's got a frame that could easily put on 15, 20 pounds in the next 5 years. He's just lean, mean, and fast.
He's lean.
He's a real athlete. I mean, this is one of the real athletes. This guy can get parallel to the ground, and he's still got balance. I mean,
crazy bend, crazy length.
He has short arms. 32 3/4 arm length is not, suboptimal, let's just say. And his high jump result was 31 inches. That raised eyebrows because a lot of people thought he's a great athlete. He might jump 38 inches, 39. No, 31. So you wonder about lower body explosion.
Which
He had
you
19,
watch
19
you
and a
watch
half
the
sacks.
tape and you would have guessed it, by the way.
Yeah, well, he's not. Yeah, I mean, this is a speed rusher. 19 and a half sacks in 3 seasons, 17 and a half over the past 2. So we'll see. We'll see. That's one. And then Shamar Stewart from A&M, who Shamar Stewart was a blue chipper, 5-star, big time talent. Real big time talent. 6'5". He played at 285 this year.
Mm-hmm.
He slimmed down to 267 for this. They weighed him at the Senior Bowl at 281, so he was kind of working his way down.
Yeah.
He was bigger, early in the year, but he's obviously sold out for the workouts. But he's got 40-inch vertical. I mean, he's a crazy athlete. We knew he was going to run sub 4.6, and he did 4.59.
I mean, yeah.
And he doesn't have a lot of moves. But if you watch A&M,
that is a dramatic overstatement. He has one move and no other moves.
Like he doesn't even have that. He doesn't even have a move.
Runs straight into your flipping face. That's all he does. And at 280,
just a high
pretty
energy.
Awesome. It's a pretty awesome move.
He's fast. He's big and fast. I mean, and
he's the biggest, strongest, meanest dude, but there's no craft to his game at all.
But he led them in pressures this year, and it was a damn good line. I mean, you had Scorton on the other side. You had Shamar
Did he lead
Turner.
him in pressures because he was consistently in one-on-ones against guys who were basically the same weight as him, and he's more athletic, and he just bull rushed him over? Because I watched Will Campbell work him.
He's got a great motor. He just keeps coming. People were going to be down on him because of the sacks and be like, oh, he's not a productive guy. But all I would say is sacks do beget sacks. So it's like it is a knack. So you'd like to see more sacks for sure. And if you like guys at the college level who get sacks and think it's going to translate, it generally does unless they have physical limitations. And then as far as guys who don't get sacks, it typically does they still are successful in the NFL if they're a certain level athlete.
Of course.
And like the guy that I would compare this guy to, reminds me of the guy who's used to go by Jason and now goes by Odafe Owe, who played at Penn State.
Okay.
He didn't have collegiate sack production. I mean, he didn't. He had like 7 sacks or something like that in 3 years combined. And he had 10 this year. So, I mean, it's just like, I know, this guy didn't sack the quarterback. Why is Owe so good now? Because he's a freaky athlete who's big, strong, and fast. It's a technique-rich position, so he has to be coached up. It's like a gem that needs to be polished. And once you polish it up, man, you really got something. So I personally think that I see Odafe Owe or Jason Owe, whatever addition, the Penn State kid who's with the Ravens now. Mm-hmm. He's a really, really good, impactful speed rusher on a really good defense. And I just think that's what this guy's going to be. I know.
Well,
I don't think
he's never going to be a speed rusher. He's
really fast. I mean, I think he could be.
It doesn't translate in the game. I mean, you can't be fast if you run straight into people as your profession. And so you're just teaching him an entirely new
led them in
skill.
Pressures.
Yeah,
I'm not just pressures.
You and I both watched a lot of A&M.
You're thinking of him as an edge. What I'm thinking of him as a guy that he's all over the formation. Like he's an interior rusher on certain downs. So he's a pass rusher. I'll say this. I understand the people that don't like him, but I think in an NFL world where almost like none of the guys in your defensive line can afford to not be pass rushers, like everybody's got to rush the passer. Right. I like this player because he's a big-bodied player that can play downs inside and outside, and his physical profile is second to none. I mean, he's really big time.
Why wouldn't you just take Nick Scourton then?
I watched the games. Nick Scourton, I like a lot. I really do like a lot. He's not nearly as dynamic as this guy. This guy has the same profile as Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's 6'4.5". This guy's 6'5".
Then why didn't
Myles Garrett weighed
272?
This guy weighed 267.
I can appreciate
4'6'4", 4'5'9", 41-inch vertical.
That's great. I watched Myles Garrett in college, and I watched Shamar. I mean, I watched these guys in college. Like It's not even remotely close. Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick in the draft for a reason, because he was a dominant force at the same flipping school. And it's like, this guy, I would argue, is the 3rd best defensive lineman on his own team, albeit an elite defensive line. But like,
I'll bet you right now, we'll make a gentleman's bet.
Okay.
If you, maybe you just threw out Scorton because Scorton's on the line. But
I love Scorton. I
think Scorton is a safe, solid single to left. I think you don't win Super Bowls with him. I think Stewart is potentially the best defensive lineman on your team, and a really talented guy. I mean, this guy, he's really talented. I'll just say this. I would defer to Chris. Like, if Chris watched him and said, "Hey, Krug, I don't think he's got it," I would be like, fine, maybe he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean,
but if Chris really thinks that this guy, he could coach this guy, I think this guy needs Chris. You know what I mean? I think if you put this guy with the Kasarik, I think in 2 years, the way Chris drives people and the kind of the culture the Niners have, he could just be absolute monster opposite Nick Bosa.
I think, by the way, that Stewart would be a wonderful pickup for the immediacy, because he can set the damn edge. I mean, there's one thing
there's your edge setter.
He's going to set the edge. So, like, I'm not concerned about. Like, I don't think that he's going to be some scrub. I think that he has a very high floor, because what he does at the weight that he was playing at, which I would expect him to go back to, is extremely valuable for a competent winning football team and a defensive line that needs somebody like that. I don't think that you should pay the price that he's likely going to cost, which I think is going to be a late 1st round pick, meaning you're going to either have to trade up or trade down from 11 or 43 in order to get him. Like, I don't see a reason to do that when there's a Landon Jackson from Arkansas available who can do a lot of the same things, or Scourton might fall down, or, there's a lot of guys who
I loved Landon Jackson today, man. He was awesome, was he not?
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Larry. Like, I believe in the 3-cone. I believe in a lot of the shuttle stuff. I do not give a flip how fast a defensive end is. The 40-yard dash, like, what does that do for me? I need to see explosion off the line. The 10 seconds.
It's the 10-yard. It's the 10-yard.
I get the 10-yard, but even so, I don't even need it that much, because that's such a minute difference, right? Like, it's 187 or 17. Like, I need to see broad jump. Broad jump tells me more. That's explosion off the line. And listen, I know that Shamar Stewart has all of these wonderful athletic traits. I didn't see it manifested at A&M to the fullest of their ability. I didn't see them manifested at the Senior Bowl. I haven't seen them yet. And I'm sure, he can absolutely come in and be a bull rusher and be valuable. And maybe he gets NFL level coaching and it goes to another level. Can't dispute it. He is a wonderful piece of clay that if you have a great defensive line coach, you can maybe make something out of him. I'll note this with Chris Kasarik. He's someone who can get guys, ironically, because, Chase Young didn't do this, but he's somebody who can drive guys to have a more competent all-around game and a stronger motor, right? That's what he does. He does very well with, like, interior pass rushers. Guys just burst, explosion. They have not really coached up anybody to, like, add to their bag, the proverbial bag. Who has gotten better as a pass rusher with, like, a new move or something under Chris Kasarik's watch? He's more of a motivator than he is maybe a technician. And
I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, because I talked to Sam O. I mean, he definitely felt like, now, he also felt like Nick really helped him quite a bit.
Yeah, Nick is effectively the bag.
But
teacher.
I mean, Chris coaches. You're right there. Nick coaches. I mean, he is not just, he's not just yelling for the hell of it. He's a cerebral defensive line coach too.
I have no problem with the way he does it. I'm just saying that you're not going to him like a Chip Engelland trying to get your shot fixed, right? Like, I'm not sure he's the defensive line coach to go and find this ball of clay and turn him.
Look at Evan Anderson, dude. I mean, he took Evan Anderson from an undrafted player.
Like the flip
but
side
Drake's
of that.
Problem's been physical, are they not? I mean, Drake Drake has not been able to
look at Robert Beal.
stage.
Robert Beal was a guy who never played at Georgia.
You're right on that one. You're right on that one.
There's a lot of athleticism, and Robert Beal has like done nothing. So
he didn't do anything at Georgia, though. In
correct,
fairness,
right? But the idea, okay. So this is the same argument, though. Robert Beal was a 5th-round pick. There was nothing gained, nothing lost. If you're getting Shamar Stewart, okay, you're saying you like the production. Well, the production all came off of one move. And again, you look at what Will Campbell did to him in the LSU game, and he goes, "You only have one move?" And he just took his lunch for the rest of the contest. It took a little bit, but once he figured it out, it was over. And
to me,
everybody
I know
NFL
exactly what you're
that
saying, but to me, the guy that I guess I would compare him to, I think, in a way, there's risk with all these guys, right? Some guys are going to bust because their body's going to break. Some guys are going to bust because they're going to get the money and they're going to freak out and they're going to make bad decisions. There's a bunch of reasons guys fail. And some guys are going to get better and really take off. So, and they're human beings. It's hard to predict.
Of course.
But I would say, Shamar Stewart to me is a very safe pick because to me he's like a Trayvon Walker. Now Trayvon Walker, unfortunately, he didn't pick himself, but he went first overall in front of Aiden Hutchinson, and that's a burden to bear. But Trayvon Walker is so big, so strong, so naturally gifted that he's going to have a really nice NFL career. I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar. I'm pretty sure he's never going to be Aiden Hutchinson, but he's going to be a very solid NFL player because of extreme athleticism. And when you have extreme athleticism, to me, those are the safe guys. Like Vernon Davis coming out of Maryland. Did he have great ball skills? No. But you know what? He's just such an extreme, awesome athlete that he had a really good career. He had one good year. He had one good 13 touchdown year as a receiver, but he was better in other ways. He was really good as an inline blocker, and he was Vernon had a very good career. But I'm just saying he wasn't like the greatest tight end of all time or anything. He was just a solid receiving tight end. I think Shamar Stewart, I don't know if he's ever going to be like, he's physically the best. I don't know if he's ever going to actually be the best, but I think he's very safe to be like damn good just because he's so big, so fast, so strong.
I get it.
I'm saying though, he has no real refinement to his game right now.
You saw it at the Senior Bowl
and the sack production has not been there.
You saw it at the Senior Bowl when they're doing one-on-ones, and that's an opportunity to really try some stuff out because you got a whole
bag of tricks.
You're at an incredible competitive advantage as a defensive lineman, and all he did was just run just face mask first into dudes like 9 times in a row, and it's like, it's really like this is your moment, and like you can't bring out a rip move or a spin. Like you can certainly do it. You see the athleticism and you're like, I'm sure that guy could just do a standing front flip if he wanted to, but he doesn't. He just runs straight into their face, which again, I do have to say, you got to appreciate it. I mean, that's a football player right there, but I have like
he's kind of badass. I mean, he's fun I'll say this. I watch A&M a lot.
He's
fun to watch. I know what you're saying though. He's not the most refined guy, but as far as who did you like? Who did you like? Because to me, I'll give you a few that I like today.
I'll give you the guy I like.
Landon Jackson.
Loved Landon
at that
Jackson.
Size.
Yeah.
And just also, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the guy who I'm looking for the guy who does really well and is still kind of pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also the guy who didn't do that well that's kind of like, hey, man,
whatever.
I'm all right. That's pretty good. Some people have low standards for themselves. So I thought Landon Jackson
about that.
Landon Jackson, I thought really stood out. I've been touting Ty Robinson, and he ran at 6'5", 288 pounds, 4'8", Dieter, and he is a beast. I mean, we're talking. This guy plays probably another 20 pounds heavier than that. He probably plays like 310. So he's obviously dropped weight to get to this 4'8",
which is hard to do at his old age.
But this guy is a absolute monster.
Yeah.
Jihad Campbell, John Joyner, Nick Martin. My favorite is Eugene Asante, who I just absolutely love, man. I love this guy as a player, and he ran 4.48, and he was disgusted. He was seriously mad. He looked up, he's like, oh. And I'm wondering what he thinks he can run. I'd love to find out what he thinks he can run. He was 6'3", 223, or 6 feet, 223, and ran 4.48. Loved him. And I'll give you another one I loved is Carson Bruner. The Niners have met with Carson Bruner from the linebacker from UW. He ran 4.58. And you heard Jeremiah just, change his whole tone because Carson Bruner's film was damn good. This kid's really a good player. And now that you know that he's not just a good player, but he's a good athlete, Carson Bruner is going to go. What's that?
He plays linebacker and he weighs 227 pounds. I mean, it's not viable. It's just not viable. You got to be at least 240 to play linebacker at the NFL level.
Oh, I don't think so anymore, man. I mean, the Niner guys aren't. I mean, I would say that, do you think Flanagan Fowles a converted safety? I think you need speed now.
I mean, I don't disagree that you need speed. The linebackers.
I mean, look at who's the best linebackers in the game. I think they're, JOK is monster. JOK weighs 220.
He probably plays at around 230, but he's a small guy. I'm not disputing that. But he's appreciably small. I think you got to be 240, and I don't totally agree with you that you need to be fast. That's the beauty of this. You have to find guys that have the weight and are fast. I was just going through some of the combine numbers from last year, and it's hilarious because the NFL put out a new site this year with their advanced analytics stuff, NFL Pro or whatever. And they had the miles per hour on the 40-yard dash from last year, right? And so Xavier Worthy gets to like 23 miles per hour. And then the second fastest dude was Isaac Garendo. Well, Isaac Garendo weighed 55 pounds more than Xavier Worthy. Like, that matters. Like, it really does. We're talking about basic physics. Mass acceleration equals force. And so I worry about a guy like Carson Bruner, who is 6'1" and weighs 227 pounds, and like didn't have the best vertical, but did have some really. He can run in a straight line really fast. Like I'm not sure what that really does. I liked what I saw. I think Teddy Buchanan got himself drafted today. I really liked watching him at Cal.
Cal kid had the 40-inch vertical.
He was a beast. And
he's a good player. Yeah, he was a really good player.
My concern was that he would get, and he has a weight issue too. He checked in at 233. My concern is that he's going to get washed out at the pro level, and that, a lot of linebacker play in the college level, it's kind of man on man. There's not a lot of gang tackling. You don't have to work through a lot of traffic. So that, maybe he would have an issue, but with that kind of athleticism, especially burst, with his play recognition that you saw at Cal, I think that he makes himself a viable day 3 pick and could turn into a pretty nice depth linebacker. The guy that I love, the player that I have fallen in love with in this draft, CJ West, defensive tackle out of Indiana. I cannot get enough of him. Watch the Ohio State tape against Indiana this year, and you can tell when CJ West is not on the field. That is like my new highest compliment. If you're a lineman on either side, and typically you're getting subbed out on defensive line, but if you're a lineman and I can tell the reps that you're not playing, that's way more important than anything else. Like, oh, it really flashed here. No, every time there's a shitty rep from your defense and I look and I don't see your number, that tells me something, because that means the alternate is true. And all this guy did was just make winning play after winning play after winning play. And I was a little bit shocked. Sadly, I think that the way that our schedules have worked out, we already recorded the video and it probably won't come out now. I think by the time that our defensive tackle video, me and Jake's defensive tackle video, comes out with our 3 guys, CJ West is going to be like the new hot name. But when I found him like a week ago, which I'm sure I was, months late compared to the people who do this at a more appreciable and higher rate, I couldn't stop watching him. I loved watching him. And then he tests out of his mind today. He's a little bit lumpy. He's not, you're not putting him number 1 in the fashion show here, but every rep just win. He is a hell of a football player. And the new formula for me, if I'm just having the idea of what the 49ers should do, I don't think there's a better scenario than getting Walter Nolan and CJ West and just I would prefer that to even getting Mason Graham at number 11. I would rather have Nolan and West on my team than the number one defensive tackle in this class, who we will have a conversation about him some other time, but I don't really get it.
There's a lot of really good defensive linemen. I mean, there's a number of guys that I'd be really excited about going after. I love Walter Nolan as well. He told people this week that he was a big fan of Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and was a Niner. Somebody who was it that was wearing? Somebody was, I forget who was telling me that they were wearing a Niner backpack, or maybe it was Shamar Stewart. I think Kev told me that Shamar Stewart met with the Niners and he was walking around afterwards wearing a Niner backpack. That cracked me up.
Where do you even get one of those? NFLshop.com? I mean,
I'll tell you. So
I guess these guys got money now.
To me, I mean, Shamar Stewart I knew was going to test amazingly. The guy Nick Martin, the linebacker who wore the beanie, the Oak State linebacker, he was pretty impressive. I mean, 5'11", 221. That's what I'm saying. A lot of these linebackers are kind of on the small side, 221. I think I like Eugene Asante. I like David Benda. The guy that I was really impressed by today was Demetrius Knight from South Carolina, the linebacker. He looked really, really good. But I'll tell you, there's always going to be a combine guy, right? And to me,
Shamar Stewart.
Well, no, Shamar Stewart. You got to give Shamar Stewart more than that, because Shamar Stewart's a huge talent.
He got
huge talent. I understand he doesn't have huge production, but he is a huge talent, and he is not going to be a bust.
So
he's not a wuss. Shamar Stewart has just been used poorly. He's just been used poorly. Believe me, I watch all these A&M games. There's times where Shamar Stewart is literally playing harder than the rest of their defense combined. Okay. His motor at times, his passion for football is greater than his production. His production, you look at his athleticism, you look at his lack of sack production, and immediately you would be like, oh, you know what? This guy doesn't want it, whatever. No heart. This guy's got the most heart. This guy's got the most. This guy tries hard in the fourth quarter.
Why? He has all the athleticism. He has all the talent around him. He has all the heart. Why doesn't he produce?
First of all, he does produce. He led the Texas A&M Aggies, a really good defense that has 3 different guys that are going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds of the draft. He led them in pressures. He didn't get home as much because he just didn't get home as much against A&M. Because they have a really good high-profile defensive line. Teams got rid of the ball really fast. I mean, guys did not hold the ball very long against A&M. And Scorton is a productive guy. He picked off some of them. And also Shamar Stewart is, as you say, he's raw. He doesn't have tons of moves. I don't think he's gotten the best coaching so far. He hasn't developed a go-to move. He beats everybody with raw talent. But the upside there is immense.
I don't want to be drafting. I don't want to be drafting strictly on upside.
I know,
but he's going to go.
He's a freakish athlete. I mean, I agree.
It's fun to take those guys in the 3rd round or the 5th round or even the 2nd round.
Where do you expect him to go?
I think he's going to go in the top 20 now.
I expect him probably to go, around 20 and between 20 and 30. And I think that's probably where he should go. I think that's where he's going to go, between 20 and 30. We'll see.
Fair enough.
The guy who I was going to say, though, is not a player who tested out great and looked great in the combine, is the Georgia kid, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. So he's 6'4 3/4", 276 pounds.
Yeah.
And he plays second in the 40 at 4.86, first with the 10-yard split at 1.69, and swept me at 36-inch vertical, 10 feet 4-inch broad jump, 7.28 3-cone, 4.34 in the 20-yard shuttle.
No, you got an absolutely elite day.
Yeah. And,
276 pounds of defensive tackle.
He didn't start until his senior year. His college stats are not that great. This is your combine guy. This is the mistake, I would say. Somebody's going to say, "Wow."
Here's your Robert Beal.
This is the mistake.
Well,
or this guy
the
just
other
figured it out later because
the other
he's a
mistake
great
might be
athlete,
Ty
but he didn't
Robinson.
play great.
The other one might be Ty Robinson, the Nebraska kid, because he just you look at all this green on his relative athletic score, and you're like, wow. And then you watch the tape, and you're like, kind of a tryhard, which is great. We're back in Shamar Stewart territory. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you have all this athleticism, and it never seems to get where it needs to go. And he's like 25 years old on top of that, so that doesn't help. By the way, bad day.
You don't like Ty Robinson? Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, I thought, were a terrific combo this year. I love Ty Robinson. I think Ty Robinson is going to be fantastic. I love the motor. Pro. He plays super hard. That guy's a badass. To me, Ty Robinson is fast and violent.
Yeah, I think he's violent. I don't think he separates from the guys that are blocking him very well, which seems to be kind of the job. Maybe that's bad coaching. I think the world of Matt Rule, so I'm not really wanting to go down that road, but I could be wrong about that. I do want to note that our guy JJ Pegues had a bad day, and that makes me kind of sad.
Well, he doesn't a great tester. He's not a great tester. Some of these defensive tackles are not the kind of shape that they should be in. I mean, he definitely didn't have a very good day. To me, I look at it this way. Who stands out athletically, that's good. And who stands out athletically, that's bad. And that's what you're looking for. The guys at the very top, you're like, whoa, okay, you got to give them theirs. And the guys at the very bottom, you got to be like, oh, okay. And then also, there's also, some guys just don't have the right body type. And it's just, they're not going to, you can tell, they're just not going to age well. To me, one guy who just looks terrible out there is Deion Walker, the 300, the Kentucky kid. He's got spindly legs, terrible bad body,
Hutch
avalanche.
Hates him. Oh, he says that he's got the worst pad level he's ever seen.
Plays high. Yeah, I mean, he's big, but he's got his body.
Someone's going to love him. He had a good Senior Bowl. Someone's going to like him. Someone's going to convince themselves that they can get those shoulders down, and they're wrong. They're wrong.
But it ain't
it.
It's not that. It's like his body is. He's
not built for it.
I mean, he's not an athlete. I mean, it's like he's not. He's really got like an avalanche going on at the gut level. I mean, it's bad.
Again, something I also don't know anything about.
It's bad. I mean, he's really, and he's got spindly little calves. I don't know. He didn't look good to me. The another guy that I was a little worried about today, Princely Umamalian, who looked good running, but there's no vertical there. There's no power in the legs. He can't really anchor. You can kind of see that on the film, and then that kind of his lack of leg strength kind of showed itself today.
You noted
Oladajo, I should say, is the guy that Tony Pauline says the Niners love and are going to take in the second round if he falls there. What do you think? Is Olufemi Oladajo going to go in the first round?
I don't think so. He's so raw, the beauty of him is that he could be all things, but he is also nothing. And so it is truly in the eye of the beholder, but he's just twitchy. So it should translate a little bit better into some of these combine things. But on the tape, you go like, oh, he really doesn't know what he's doing, but you like the possibilities. It feels close in like a lot of different areas, as opposed to, we're going back to flipping Shamar Stewart, poor guy's getting raked over the coals here for no good reason, but by me. Like with Shamar, you're like, you'd like to see some more diversity of thought. Whereas with Oladajo, it's like, oh, there's nothing but diversity. He's winging it. He's exploring the space. I would be surprised in this class if with the quality that they have at both tackle and end in this class, it'd be surprising if he was a first rounder. I think he'll be there at 43, and that might be a bit of a stretch, frankly. I mean, he feels like somebody who 50, 60 range, but I have no problem with the Niners pulling the trigger.
Yeah,
there.
To me, he's a third round pick. I think in the 40s that's too high. But if you, if you wait till the 7th, if you wait till the third round, he probably is not.
He's not there. The Niners last year took Ricky Pearsall at the end of the first round, he was probably a mid-second rounder if we're being, putting an objective grade on it. They took Renardo Green, a guy who both myself and my man Hutch were very, very high on. We both thought he was a first-round talent. Most people that we talked to laughed at us and thought that he was a third-round talent. We met somewhere in the middle where the Niners picked him at 61. So, like, if the Niners have their sights set on somebody and they really like a guy, and they really do, when they pick with conviction. They don't dick around and play the ball game of, maybe he'll still be there and this and that. Like, they don't trust themselves.
They want to make sure they get their guy.
Which, you know what? Appreciate the conviction, and they've been they were more about that in 2024 than they were in any other draft, and it worked out well for them. Pick the guy. Who gives a damn what the number is? That for every, Renardo Green
exactly.
and
If you think
Ricky
the guy's
Pearsall,
great,
you get a Moody, but you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I mean, if you think the guy's great and you have the conviction personnel wise,
totally.
Who cares? Nobody's going to sit there and be like, dude, as you're at the Hall of Fame speech. Yeah. Oh, you were a third-round pick?
Yeah,
not a second.
Sporting News gave you a C+ on that pick. It's like, who gives a shit?
But I will say this: Pauline is not like everybody else. If he says they're interested in Oladejo, they're interested
shit out there,
in Oladejo, and I would not be surprised if they like Oladejo and they. Well, if they really like him, supposedly the kids' interviews have been incredible too.
Yeah.
And I could see it. Like when I was watching the Senior Bowl, they showed some of the locker room scenes, and you could see Oladejo just bouncing around the locker room, high energy, really vocal, really. He's going to be one of those guys that gets you ready to play. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a tone setter. And if they're going to say goodbye to Debo and they're going to change their locker room, they're going to have to add some tone-setting type players who play with attitude and energy, and Oladejo does that. He's got, other flaws. I agree he's raw, but I could see them going for him.
I get it. I got no problem with that. That's a good pick if you have somebody who is more established, right? You can have someone who's raw if you're not asking them to be a 3/4 of down guy, right? If you don't need him to start, where you can, put him behind a Joey Bosa to where, hey, we can just sick him for a year or two while he figures out how to be a professional. He figures out how to fully expand it. Whereas so that is a very dependent on free agency pick. If they don't have somebody in there and maybe they still feel some sort of way about the guys they already have or Floyd, they'd be wrong, but they might feel that way. Then that's a dangerous pick. Then I want someone who has a higher floor, and I don't want to bet on the ceiling, which is prodigiously. I mean, that's a 10 out of 10 ceiling on the UCLA kids. So, it's a great class where you're not having to stretch inherently, right? We're talking about Oladejo as someone who they can take at 43, and even then, we both agree that's probably a little early. Whereas I think in last year's class, the first guy off the board at defensive end was his running mate. Well, I guess he was at Cal, but UCLA guy Latu, who had a lot of the same concerns. Like, Latu is a good player. He's far more refined and all that, but there's still this sort of just incompleteness and just, he's very twitchy and we'll see what happens at the pro level. And turns out nothing really happened at the pro level, at least in year one. That guy got taken 15th. So scarcity, not an issue in this class if you're looking for a defensive lineman, and the Niners are looking for about 4 of them. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned, Pauline says they like Oladejo. He also says, I'm told the Niners will look for O-line, a corner, and a wide receiver in free agency. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
O-line wise, I looked at the list and I pared it down.
Okay. I got a couple
and
guys too. Let's see if we line up.
Yeah, this is who I have as fits for the 49ers on the offensive line. And as guys I'd be interested in on the offensive line.
Right.
James Daniels from the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Jedrick Wills from the Browns.
Yeah,
Will Hernandez from Arizona. Tevin Jenkins from the Bears. Drew Dahlman from the Falcons. Dan Moore from the Steelers. And Deontay Smith from the Bengals.
Okay.
Who do you...
Two other guys.
I'm not looking at older guys. I'm trying to look at. I kind of think they're gonna, if they go, they like to seem like if they sign free agents, they either like to go with, if they're going with like kind of no name young, they like to go with like younger guys that they can kind of groom.
They're cheaper too, right? So you're
Cheaper,
kind of
yeah.
betting on upside. Will Fries, the guard from Indianapolis, I think is a really, really good player. He broke his leg in week 5 last year, but he had been really good for like the prior 20 games. I think that's a set and forget it guard. You don't have to worry about left guard anymore with Fries. He fits the scheme. Mekhi Becton out of Philly, I mean, worked for the Eagles. They got him for a year. He went in and mauled.
I would love Mekhi Becton. I just don't see him as a fit. And
I get that.
He's so huge, and they seem like they like smaller, more athletic guys. And are you going to move? Are you moving Pooney off of right guard?
No. You play him at left because it's not as it's.
You play Becton at left.
Yeah, you play Becton at left. Now I will say that it's a good point that he's physically humongous. You have a small quarterback. That's probably not the best move to have Mekhi Becton standing in front of him all the time. Something they have to keep an eye on. And then I agree with you. I mean, on a bunch of these guys, but Wills, I think, is a really interesting one. He could be their Mekhi Becton. Like Mekhi Becton is a failed tackle. The Eagles are like, you want to play guard? They bring him in. He plays guard. He dominates at guard. Jedrick Wills, like, never really looked like a tackle to me. Easy to say now, of course. Gets benched. I don't know how much of a market there's going to be for him because I'm sure there's a lot of guys who are going to be like, well, do we need him as a swing tackle, this and that. If I'm the Niners, I call up Wills and I just go like, you want to play guard? And I bet he'd be great at guard. That's his game. And, I could be
probably
wrong.
Would want more. He probably wants that tackle money though. You'd have to pay.
Well, and I want to get paid for this, but here we are,
Yeah, exactly.
Like
a lot of people say Drew Dahlman, but I think Dahlman's price might be exorbitant.
Dahlman's price might be exorbitant, and I don't feel like the Niners, my man Hutch has been bringing up Dahlman incessantly for months, and it's like, shut up with the Dahlman already. I get it. Anyone who's in on Dahlman, they're right. Like he's
20, it's not about right. He's 26. It's just a matter of
he's 26.
Can they afford him?
He's a NorCal kid. His dad was a Niner. Like he's exactly the right scheme fit. Like it'd be perfect. The more I bring him up, right? And it's been months now of his name coming up again and again and again. The more I bring him up with people whose opinion around the league and inside the building that I trust, I just don't get the sense that they're actually interested. There just seems to be no smoke at all outside of, third party opinion. And they like to keep things under wraps, but they're just not that clandestine. Like if they really thought that Drew Dahlman was the dude, like it would have leaked out at some point. I don't think they're looking at center. I think they're going to ride again with 64.
I here's my thing. I think that they know that center's not ideal, but I don't think they want to tie themselves to a free agent who's only a center. Like, yeah, I think there's a very good chance. I'm looking at this list, and I like, if it was just about like who do you want? Yeah, I want Drew Dahlman,
of course.
And then if it's about like just long term or whatever, I kind of like Tevin Jenkins as a road grading guard who I think is going to be, he's young. I mean, he's 26. He's going to be good for the next 10 years.
Right.
But the guy to me that I think fits the best is James Daniels because James Daniels now he's had the injury. He's had the injury and he wears the whatchamacallit cap or whatever. So I don't know if he's
Guardian cap.
The Guardian cap. I don't know if
well, listen, the Evan Anderson special.
Right. I don't know, but I mean, have you guys had concussions or are they just worried about concussions? Either way.
Can go either way.
I really don't care. But I like Daniels and he was a good player, well coached at Iowa. And he is a guy who, if you got to camp and Brendel looked awful, you could just be like, hey, James, you're our center. Or you could also plug him in at left guard and he would give you a lot of flexibility going into the draft. So I like, if you could, commit yourself to getting a tackle in the draft somehow and you signed a James Daniels, and then you went with like a day 3 interior player that you liked. I like Marcus Ware. There's a couple of guys I like, but I like Marcus Ware quite a bit from Montana State. I like Jackson Slater from Sac State. I like the guy from Carolina who I think maybe a fullback. But James Daniels would be nice because then see you have Nugent and you have Zakel and you have some different guys. You have Ben Barch, and who are you going to play one at guard, at center? A lot of these guys can play both. So I think in that vein, you go for a guy like Daniels. Then if one of your young centers like Nugent, like one of these guys really makes a step and is like, hey, this guy's really good. Zakel or Nugent or one of these guys plays center well. Then you could play Daniels at left guard. Or if you can't, you don't get that interior player in the draft, and then you could play Daniels at left guard for Banks, and he's probably cheaper. So
yeah,
that's how I see the offensive line.
Yeah, listen, it's a good year to also have a little bit of money to flash around on the line. Now, last year guards went up to $20 million. I don't see anybody like that, and I think it should be noted. They bring back, Louise Dieter. They just re-signed the guy. Barch. Barch deserves, with the game and a half that he played, which was awesome. He was awesome for a game and a half. Smallest sample size. Some of it was on snow. I know I sound ridiculous, but he was a revelation in the tone of that team. Like, in a weird way, that season ended not because of the record, but because Ben Barch got injured. People were so down on his injury coming out of that game. Like, yes, our season's over. We all know it's done. But also Ben Barch got injured, and like he was like a ray of sunshine to that team for some reason. Like, they finally figured out left guard just in time for everything to go to shit around him. Regardless, like, Barch deserves a shot at camp. And so, while I'd like to see, we'd all
he can play center too. He can play center or left guard.
I think that you need to bring in a young guy, another veteran, and let Barch go in and just have a 3-man competition. The same way that they kind of did with Pooney. Like, Pooney, hey, he got a shot, and then no one else wanted to step up for the job, and so he took it. As opposed to maybe a Spencer Burford situation where it really wasn't a competition because they're like, nah, it's Burford. And like, if someone wants to take it from Burford, but then no one stepped up to take it from Burford, I want to see some competition at camp at left guard. And I think Barch is step one, and there's 2 more steps to go.
Yeah. Corner.
Yeah.
Who do you now? This is I had it pared down. There's a list of 40 names in every position, so I had to pare it down a little bit. So I pared it down to this: DJ Reed, who's only 28. I was a little surprised by that. I thought he was a little older. 28. Rajul Douglas, Byron Murphy, Emmanuel Mosley, who's had a lot of injuries, but he's still only 28.
That's a tough sell, but yeah.
Asante Samuel, who would be a very high-priced item.
That's right.
Noah Igbenogany was a former first-round pick who's coming off a pretty good year. He's 25. That's kind of an under-the-radar one.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'll give you credit on that one. That's a good one.
And the guy who I really like is Paulson Adebo.
Yes.
Saints have cap problems. I don't think he's going to stay. He's probably going to leave.
Saying the Saints have cap problems is like saying that I have a beer issue. Like, it's a total like, the Saints have cap problems. The Saints invented new cap problems. The Saints are paying off credit cards with credit cards right now. Paulson Adebo, I don't know how you can fiscally keep him on the roster. Like, he'd be awesome. Can I give you one more name?
Stanford guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Jordan Lewis from the Cowboys. I've always liked Jordan Lewis.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. I'll say this. I like Jordan Lewis's play, but Jordan Lewis, the guy, is too hot for this locker room.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Jordan Lewis is had issues along the way. So I don't know if
he's a yapper. I'll give him that.
There's some stuff back there.
I'll give you that. But he can play.
I'll say, to
and
me,
you can slide
it
him
looks
inside
like
and outside, which is nice.
DJ Reed or Paulson Adebo. I don't know what Paulson Adebo would cost you.
It's a good question.
That, and if you failed on both of DJ Reed and Paulson Adebo, maybe Igbenogany. There's also, some talk that maybe Saleh would like to have, like a shutdown corner, that he feels like there's so much depth in this draft that maybe they'll start with like a Will Johnson and could be thinking, try to upgrade the corners. This guy just had Sauce and DJ Reed. Now he's coming here. Demo is really a good player, and Renardo, but they just lost Mooney, so they probably could use a big time corner. I don't know if they have a true number one. I mean, DJ Reed's nice because he's tough to play inside, but he's on the Niners. Demo's a great slot corner, and DJ Reed's actually way better on the boundary. So it's like, that might work. And I got no problem with DJ Reed, except he's had penalties the last couple of years. He's had handsy. A little bit more injured. He's getting more handsy, and I'm worried about that trend. Yeah, he's lost a step. Debo, I think physically at being 25, where Reed's 28.
Debo's a great cover 3 corner.
I think Debo would probably be my pick if I could pick one.
I really like that. I don't know what he's going to cost. You can't really go above $5 million a year. I'd like to think that he's going to have a better market than that, but who the hell knows? We're going into a Timothy Mozgov situation here, Larry. Like, the salary cap went up $4 million over everyone's most extreme expectations. So, like, there are going to be teams that just waste
$279.2 million. It's official today.
And going into the through the final weeks, 275. 275 was the pie in the sky. They came in $4 million over pie in the sky. Like, the money is flowing down, and there are going to be stupid teams. There always are teams that have nothing to lose, teams that are just going to flash it, and there's going to be more bidders, right? Just inherently, because everyone has a little bit more than they thought they would. That's a extra $4 million windfall to every single team, on top of what's probably another $10 million on top of what they had budgeted on a conservative level. So that's just a $15 million player that everyone can get. Everyone can get themselves. This is the Kevin Durant free agency. But never forget what happened in 2016 when the Warriors were able to sign Kevin Durant, because Chris Paul and LeBron James decided that they didn't want to smooth over the salary cap because they were going to be free agents that offseason too. They wanted their money then. The first guy off the board wasn't Durant, right? Everyone got $20 million to spend. Basically a max player. You all get one because the cap is going up that much. The first player off the board was Timothy Mozgov to the Lakers, and they paid him like $28 million a year. It was absurd. And last year, guards were costing 20. This year, I don't know where the inflation's going to go. Specifically, it might just be across the board. It might be at corner. It might be, who the hell knows, center. I mean, it might be Drew Dahlman who sees the windfall. But things are going to get stupid out there, and the Niners are not in a position to do anything stupid. They got to be very prudent with how they spend their money because they have a lot of places they need to throw it to. Paulson Adebo would be a great pickup, though, if the price is right. And, theoretically, he's not going to be that top-of-the-line guy. He might be a second or a third-wave corner, at least I think. And if that's the case, then the Niners might be able to get him. As for the idea of going out and getting a number one, I'm not sure this is the draft to do that in. I don't. I like the Michigan kid.
Will Johnson, MVP of the national championship game 2 years ago.
He doesn't
he's
strike
big,
me as
he's intriguing.
He's a good player.
He was hurt this year. He's a
very good player, but at 11, that's too rich for my blood. And Travis Hunter's not going to be there. And I'm not sure that Travis Hunter at 11, he absolutely, don't get me wrong. If Travis Hunter's there at 11, you just take Travis Hunter.
He's awesome. Travis Hunter's the best corner and best receiver in this draft.
He's not the best receiver, but
I think he is.
I think there's a gentleman from Missouri who disagrees. But
we're going to talk about that too if we get to it. Let's jump here. Let's go to wide receiver. Okay. The free agent wide receivers are T. Higgins. I mean that I look at any I'd have any interest in at all. This is just the group.
Yeah.
T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Darius Slayton, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Boyd, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Tutu Atwell, McCole Hardman, and Tylan Wallace from the Ravens. Higgins to me is not possible, way out of their range, but you never know. I mean, the Niners have so much. They've created so much cap room, and they have so much ability to create more cap room that I can't discount any player. Really, if you want any player, you could get any one player, but I don't see it happening. Keenan Allen has Bay Area ties because he went to Cal. He's an older player, but man, he could give them one really good year, especially with Ayuk out. That's intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper I put on the list, but you know what? Amari Cooper didn't do anything in Buffalo. I'm kind of skeptical. Brandon Cooks, I interviewed him years ago. He told me he grew up in Stockton as a Niner fan, so I think it would be cool to see him here for that reason alone. But
he'd be a good player.
He's been everywhere. He's been
everywhere, but you know what? He's still Brandon Cooks. Like, Brandon Cooks is still just – he's been the same third or fourth best wide receiver on a team forever. Like that's the kind of – as weird as this sounds, they never replaced Ray McLeod.
Yeah.
And they just need somebody who's a pro who can go out there and, they're putting out Chris Conley. God bless him. Good player, great guy.
He's a free agent.
Right. But they need to upgrade from him. And
they need speed. I mean, let's be honest.
Somebody
they're slow.
Who can stretch the field.
Yeah, they're slow. I mean, Darius Slayton is 28. He can run. Yeah. Elijah Moore is 24. He can run. Rondale Moore is 24.
I know somebody who can run.
He could run.
Tutu Atwell and Hollywood Brown are free agents.
Yeah, Hollywood Brown. What do you make of Hollywood Brown? Do you like Hollywood Brown? Because
no one knows what Hollywood Brown is, but he's fast.
Yeah, he's fast. He is fast.
But
Tutu Atwell's faster.
To run the 9 route. Yeah, Tutu's great. Tutu would be a great pickup, and he's coming from the Rams, where it's not as if the scheme is going to phase him at all, right?
Right.
I'd go get Ray again. I mean, in a weird way, like Ray.
Ray was good in Atlanta.
He was good for them. Yeah.
Wallace, I think, is an underrated player in Baltimore. I've kind of liked him in college, and he hasn't done much. Elijah Moore, I liked at Ole Miss. He's kind of bounced around a little bit. I could see them going Darius Slayton. I personally, I think.
What about DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't see special anymore. I see possession receiver. They don't need a possession. They have JJ. They have Pearsall. They need speed.
I'll give you one more name then. And it's not really a speed guy, let's be clear. But Josh Palmer has a lot of potential still.
Tennessee.
It's never manifested. He's playing for the Chargers.
Yeah. And
that feels like a good fourth option. Right? Maybe you're overpaying a little bit there, but you have they need someone better than Cowing, right? Let Cowing prove that he's better than this guy in camp. He'll get the shot, but they just need some depth there. You're going to get rid of Debo. You're not going to have Ayuk. So it's JJ and Pearsall. Having a Josh Palmer in there is a really good spot. And then, hey, maybe Josh Palmer, injuries and stuff happen. Josh Palmer would still see the field. I agree with you though on the speed. You need someone who can stretch and push a safety. I don't love him either, but that's probably why I'll
give you some guys that I've watched because I've been spending a lot of time watching.
Yeah,
I'll give you a couple guys.
Is this in the draft?
This is now in the draft because these we all know all the. I mean, of that list, I kind of like Rondale Moore the most because
it's a good play. Yeah,
he's super cheap. He's 24. To me, you need someone who can do the Debo thing. And the only way it's going to work is if you get somebody who's faster than what Debo was. Mm-hmm. And Rondale Moore's definitely faster than Debo. Now, he's coming off an injury. He'd have to be healthy. But if he's healthy, I know Kyle likes him. I asked Kyle one time about Rondale Moore on the radio, and he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, he's dangerous. You got to know where he's at all times. So that's the guy I'd kind of go for, maybe a low-end guy. But in the draft, let's talk about the wide receiver for a second. I did the deep dive on the wide receivers. Okay. McMillan has got crazy ball skills, right? Crazy ball skills, but I'm eager to see what his 40 is this week and what his vertical is. And if his 40 is not great and his vertical's not great, and some people are telling me it's not going to be great, then he's going to fall like Kuiper's got him falling to 17. He's got great ball skills. He'll aggressively attack the ball. But I'll tell you, when I watch a player, if he's really, really, really good, I usually turn off the film going, God, we got to get that guy. Got to get that guy.
No.
And I felt that way about Luther Burden III when I watched him for a half hour earlier this week, and I started watching all the different people's comments on him and interviews he's done, and I just see this is what I see. Now you tell me if I'm wrong, because Kuiper doesn't even have him in the first round.
Listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat it on Burden, right? I'm Mizzou through and through.
For full disclosure, Dieter's a Missouri guy.
I've watched every snap that kid has played.
This is what I see. if you back away from the micro lens, because we get so micro this time of year, and back away macro, this was one of the true elite high school players.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was a generational type talent. This was a 5-star by all of the publications.
It's a program changer for Mizzou. Yeah.
This was the guy. Okay. Yeah. He is an East St. Louis kid. He is tough as nails.
Yes.
You can't hit this guy and blow him up and intimidate him.
Right.
This if you like Juwan Jennings, this is Juwan Jennings with tons and tons of talent. If you gave Juwan Jennings big time talent, speed, and run after the catch ability, stop and start, explosive ability, touchdowns, confidence, this is the toughness of Juwan Jennings.
He's a football player. A true football player.
With home run hitting ability. This guy's a run after the catch monster.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 2 steps and he's full speed.
Right.
You can't intimidate him. Nope. He is the toughest guy on the field. I've done interviews in the locker room. Sometimes when I'm bored, I'll be like, hey, man, who's the toughest guy in the room? And I used to hear a lot of Kinlaw, a lot of Greenlaw. But guess what I would also hear a lot of? Juwan freaking Jennings.
Yes.
And you just don't hear that about receivers. And I guarantee you, if the Niners drafted Luther Burden III, within a year, people would, who's the toughest guy in the room? People would say Luther Burden III. This guy is tough as nails and explosive and cocky and confident, and he is the guy. If you're looking to replace Debo in this offense, there is no better player than this guy, because this guy can run the short stuff. You can drop it to him. He runs the slants. He runs the screens. He runs the bubbles. He runs the hitches. This guy is Debo. He can run the end around. He's 5'11", 210.
Yeah.
And he's explosive.
Crazy explosive.
I don't know. What do you think he's going to run, Dieter? What do you think he's going to run?
Probably won't be crazy. Like it will be 4-4-3,
4-4-4, something like that.
Yeah, 4-4-5. Here's the knocks on Burden now. Little small, right? So you're right. He is tough as nails because he was doing a lot of stuff that only bigger men would dare to do, and he can float. Right? This is somewhat a byproduct of Mizzou and play calling and the quarterback and all that, but he could just disappear for stretches, and he needs to be schemed up a lot of times. My knock on McMillan is that I don't think he can beat press man-to-man, even though he is bigger, stronger, theoretically faster. I don't think he can beat man-to-man. I watched this kid Parrish at Kansas State, put him in jail for an entire game, to the point where they had to move him away from him. With Burden, because he is not a physically imposing wide receiver, he is very dependent on moving around in the formation in order to get himself open. Now, again, the athleticism, when you do give him that requisite, which isn't much, a bit of space, look the hell out. But if he's in a position where he's bracketed, he floats. He floats through games. And he doesn't make himself known unless the ball is in his hands, which was
he only had 100-yard day this year. It was against Boston College.
Yeah.
But
he had some big catches in second halves this year. There was a lot of times that they would go into halftime this season, and Mizzou had an outstanding season, not as good as the year before, but an outstanding season nevertheless. And there would be times where they would clearly go into halftime and say, why are we not giving Luther Burden the ball? And then they'd come out and they'd give Luther Burden the ball. They
also had that guy Weiss, who's pretty good.
Theo Weiss, outstanding player.
He's a good player. He came on and he's got speed. They've got some dudes for sure. But I'll say this too: the more I watched them,
there was no question that Burden was the man.
So you're a fan of his?
Yes, I think that Luther Burden is going to be a very, very good pro player. Do I think that he'll ever be I don't think he'll ever be Jackson Smith and Jigba, because I don't think he has that kind of polish. But I think that if you put him on a team as a number 2 receiver, you're cooking with gas, man.
See, I think he's better than that. I think he's going to be a really good receiver. I think he's more like a Malik Neighbors. I
don't see him at that level. I just don't see him as that kind of tactician.
I think he's a better, safer pick than McMillan. I know McMillan's big, fast, with great ball skills.
Yeah,
but we'll see what McMillan. This is a big week for McMillan.
McMillan
runs sub 4.4. If McMillan runs 4.37, and I've got buddies who say he is going to run 4.37. That if that happens, then he is going to go top 10 probably.
Y'all can have him. And listen, I have to be very clear. Like I've stated a couple of times, like I'm not the biggest McMillan guy, and I would not take him in the top 10 in this draft, maybe even the top 20. Because when I watch the tape, it just does not feel like he can actually separate, which is ridiculous. You should be dominating with the level of competition that he was going up in the Big 12 when everyone's playing off man. The fact that he can't seem to separate, that's a bit of a concern to me. There is also the shot that he is just unbelievably dominant from the second he gets into the NFL game, because he is so big and strong and fast, and his ball skills are unparalleled in this class. I mean, the reason that we were able to see so clearly that his ball skills are unmatched in this class is because he is constantly catching contested balls because he can't separate, right? It's a double-edged sword there. But yeah, I mean, I could be eating crow. He could be absolutely awesome at the pro level, because
I'll tell you, the
tight.
Burden I loved. Some people love Jalen Royals from Utah State. I spent some time watching him, and I understand he's thick and he's
a good player,
and he's a good player. I don't see super special. I think Isaiah Bond is going to run maybe the special 40 time. I could see him being a sub 4.3 40 guy. He's very fast. But he didn't do much this year.
That's right.
I'll tell you the two guys that are really intriguing to me are the TCU guys.
Yeah,
Jack Betch, who was so good in Mobile. And
I'm not a big Betch guy, but I get you.
You can see his toughness, but it's Savion Williams. And Savion Williams,
what if Debo was
outside of Burden, who really was, I was like, whoa, look at that guy. I thought the Savion Williams film is the best. That's the guy. If you can get an,
what round,
you can trade
what
back.
Round do you have, Adam? What round do you have Savion Williams going?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know how he's going to run. I mean, to me, he's dynamic as hell. I would
don't
say
give
he's
a shit
going to
what
go.
He runs. I've watched the tape. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, if he doesn't run, like if he runs sub 4.5, I think he's going to be probably a third-round pick. But if he runs north of 4.5, I think he's probably going to be more like a fifth-round pick. There's just a lot of talent.
I have a second-round grade on him.
Oh, I don't think he goes in the second round. We'll see.
Well,
I'll say this: his film is awesome. His film looks great. I mean, if you watch it really closely, him really closely, he is a freaky player. He was a high school quarterback, and they've used him a lot on the goal line as a wildcat quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's thrown 3 passes this year for touchdowns, I believe. He's 3 for 3. He's a wildcat quarterback. He's a running back. He's kind of what Kyle Shanahan dreamt Jalen Hurd was going to be. It's like, Jalen Hurd. Remember, Jalen Hurd had a couple good preseason games and looked really good.
I might have written a column saying that it was going to be a thing. So that,
Savion
by the way,
Williams is a better version of he's a healthier.
He might be
this guy's 6'4", 225, but he's really, really super confident, and he can throw the ball really well.
His arms,
and he can catch it, and he's big, he's huge, and he's got this physical swagger about him where it's like you can't hit him and hurt him. He's like that kind of a tough guy. He's intriguing, man. Savion Williams is super intriguing.
He is a terrible receiver.
He fights the ball,
bad separation. The ball coming at him, it's always like a surprise. He catches it with his chest. Like, he's bad.
He's a runner. He's a guy with the ball. He's good once he's got the ball.
By the way,
but it's
Debo
hard
Samuel,
to get him the ball.
Not a great catcher of the football. Sometimes he'll make
he's a
it
lot
really
like
cool.
Debo.
He's a 6'5" Debo. Like, what's not to like?
Yeah,
a lot of things. But
he's tough as hell. I mean, And if
they
you
gave him the
if
ball
you
and they
can
let
get him
him
the
go.
ball,
Yeah.
he's really explosive.
He's awesome. I have, again, second round grade on him. I think that you put him in this scheme in particular. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's maybe even too obvious. Like you want to overanalyze it, but it's like, oh, you should just draft this guy. Like round 3. Are you kidding me? You're telling me that they could get this guy with pick, 75?
Yeah.
Oh my God. What a coup. What a
it's
coup.
it's this draft is super loaded. I think from
They're always
15
loaded.
through 120, somewhere in there. There's a lot of really good players. I mean,
I kind of think there's a no man's land between like 20 and 43. Like so if the Niners were to trade down, I think that they could still end up getting their guy might fall to them there. But there is the beginning of the second round. Usually you feel like you have a good read on it. The beginning of the second round this year and the end of the first round, it really feels like there's a reason all of those guys are there. It's almost like the damaged good portion of the draft. These are guys who are too good at football to, but not good enough to be first round picks, or a bunch of guys who should be first round picks, but there's something else going on. We don't know what's going on, and they kind of fall in there. It just feels like the danger zone of this draft, going up to basically where the Niners pick. And it's like, if I'm the Niners, I try to get out of that range, get down to the end of the second again, maybe pick up a fourth in the process, maybe trade. I'd trade down twice if I were the Niners, but I've overthought this too.
No, I would. I totally agree with you. I would trade down twice too. I mean, it really depends how you want to play your hand, but I would definitely trade down twice.
And I don't think that's their ball.
3 or 4 extra picks.
I mean, Larry, I've seen your mock drafts. I'm familiar with your zeal
you know
for
my
extra
ways.
picks.
You know my ways.
But
I want to rebuild this thing. I'm too impatient. I want to rebuild this thing right now.
They have 65 guys under contract. There is a certain limitation. They're going to have to cut a guy or two that they draft here, and that's with 10. But it is a weird. It is currently structured as somewhat of a weird draft because the quarterbacks don't provide it any structure. Because the quarterbacks aren't going early, and it can get funky there, where the second quarterback comes off the board at 7 and the third quarterback comes off the board at 50, depending on how people feel about Jackson Dart or the kid from Louisville. Because the quarterbacks are not providing it that early structure, I just think that this thing could get real weird real fast. And I don't want to be in a position in a weird draft, and this might be too esoteric, but I don't want to be in a position in a draft that is getting weird, where I'm having to choose between the lesser of two evils. And that's what it feels like end of the first round, beginning of the second round, pretty much up until, if not including, the 49ers second round pick. It just feels like, why is this guy here? Or I guess we should take this guy a little bit earlier, like guys with third round grades that you're taking at second because, good football player, and you feel some sort of conviction. You and I would trade down. It's easy for us to say. The Niners, I'm going to give them credit. They stuck to their guns on their guys last year. They took them earlier than other people would have, or at least what consensus was. And that worked out, I think, great for them. So they should probably stick to that motto. Find your guys, limit your possibilities, if you will. And if that guy, you come up on the clock and that guy's there, who gives a damn what, the value of the pick is? Take the dude, because all that matters is what they do on the field.
Who's your quarterback? It's interesting. It's like
in this
quarterback's
class?
One of those things. Well, quarterback's one of those things where it's like, there's a bunch of false favorites every year because they vault a bunch of guys up there. So like last year, for example, I'll be fully transparent here. I did not like Caleb Williams.
Right.
I did not like Drake May.
Right.
I did not like J.J. McCarthy. I did not like Bo Nix. The guys I liked were Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix and Joe Milton and
really like Joe Milton.
Austin Reed. I really liked
right.
Austin Reed.
I liked all 4 of those guys too. I mean, you and I were all in on Penix number 1 overall. He should have been the number 1 guy. We both agreed that Daniels had this quality about him that couldn't be fully explained, and it was going to be a total boom or bust, right?
Yeah,
Like
you could see his refinement.
It was you were either going to know in the first 5 days if he could do it or not, and it was pretty clear as soon as he got to camp. You're like, oh, he's just doing the same thing he did at LSU, which was transcendent play, and that continued all the way to the NFC Championship game. I don't have a quarterback in this class. I haven't dove deep into the quarterbacks yet. That's kind of the thing I'm saving for last because it doesn't feel terribly pertinent for the Niners. But I do have a quarterback for the 49ers this offseason. They need to right the wrong and get Justin Fields.
Wow. Why do you feel compelled?
I felt like
he
Justin
looked
Fields.
so bad in Pittsburgh last year.
That's fine.
He got replaced by Russell because he just couldn't do it in the red zone. It was weird. It was like they'd get to the red zone and he could only run it in. He could never pass it in because
he can't see the football field.
Or he doesn't throw with any anticipation. I mean,
no,
his greatest throws look great, and he's a 4.4 flat runner.
That's right.
But you want him here?
Yes, I want him here. I want him on the Sam Darnold reconciliation plan. These are it's a pretty straightforward argument. You come here. I mean, you can't really sell the greasy of it all anymore. But
I don't think you have to sell me on it's good for his career. I mean, it's absolutely good for his career. I mean, nobody would argue that it's not good for him. Is it good for the 49ers? Is it good for Brock? Is he the best option? I mean, I don't know. I think he's more talented than 99% of the other candidates.
I think putting him in a system that will force him to acquiesce to those rules or bounce around as the third or second quarterback on two more teams before he tries his hand in Canada. Like, what does he have left to salvage in his career? He's been replaced as the starter at two different spots. He's clearly a backup in this league. And if he wants another shot at being a starter, he might have to, swallow his pride a little bit. And again, he is, by all accounts, first class, high character guy. I'm not impugning the way he goes about it. I'm just saying, like, buying into the system and using all of that brain power and all of that athleticism to do it Kyle Shanahan's way, which is almost antithetical to the way he's done it so far in his career, and just buying in completely to that tutelage gives him a shot. It gives him a shot at being somewhere as the number one next year. And I think for the Niners, for a backup quarterback, like, you can take a kid, right? Then you can go with Mordecai. You can do whatever. You can take another kid. You can have a project there. That's a lot of work. I would rather have someone who's at least, been in an NFL game, and at the very worst, can run around a little bit,
But is he going to be happy sitting? Because Brock Purdy's 25 years old.
He's here for a year,
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, you know what? To me, that's too much talent, but I like it. I mean, I like the idea of maybe a Flacco, because I like the idea of a veteran.
Flacco sucked last year,
but he had multiple 300-yard days. He's got a big arm. He's not going to wet the bed.
But his 300-yard days, he threw 4 interceptions. Listen,
I'll tell you this. I also really like.
If the Colts believed in Flacco, they would have
Drew
kept
Lock.
him.
I like Drew Lock. Drew Lock had a very good end of the year.
I've said nice things about a Missouri guy, so now I got to say some negative things about him. Like, Drew Lock ain't it, baby.
I know, but he's we're talking about backup quarterbacks. We're talking about Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. Those guys were horrible.
Yeah, but
really.
When we were talking about those guys before the season started, I mean, I think I wasn't alone on this, but I think I was pretty clear with my stance on, like, why even bother? Because you're not going to win any games with either of them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to have a quarterback you can win with. I think you could probably win with Flacco. I'll say this about this year.
We're talking about Locke and Flacco. I mean, you can probably win with Flacco. Then why didn't they last year? Like they did with the Browns.
Well, I think the 49ers could win some games with Flacco. Flacco won a couple games. I mean, if you go back and look at his game log,
they went back to Richardson. They still went back to Richardson, and they didn't want to.
They've had the investment in Richardson. I mean,
They didn't want to.
Richardson's
They
their
benched
guy.
his ass. I mean, he is their guy until he wasn't, and now they're going to bring in more competition. They might even bring in Fields in Indianapolis. They might draft a quarterback early. Like he's their guy, but not enough to where they're not flirting with everybody else. This is a pretty open relationship they got going on here. I don't think that they're fully married.
It's
If
interesting.
it is, it's a
The
very
Niners have
area version of marriage with this polyamory shit.
there's lots of options. I mean, you can go to Zach
Yeah.
Wilson, you could go to Justin Fields, you could go to Mac Jones, you
I
could go
almost
to
buy the Zach Wilson aspect of it more. Mac Jones would be, hey, Kyle gets his guy. It'd be a good story for a day, and you can win it with him as much as you can win with anybody else, which is to say, not a lot.
part of me says, you know what? Try your hand in the draft. I kind of feel like there's some sleepers here.
Who do you like?
Okay, so this is how I see the quarterbacks this year. I love Cam Ward. I'm a huge Cam Ward fan. I
If
love
he was there at
watching him.
11, would you take Cam Ward?
Yes, I would. Yes,
I would.
I love Cam Ward. I really do. I think I see very special player in Cam Ward.
Okay.
Shador, don't want Shador.
Right.
Don't see the specialness in Shador. He's there. He makes some highlight plays, but there's really no consistency to Shador. To me, he's way overdrafted.
It's just
obviously
it's
I would
total
obviously
boomer
like
bust.
him. I would like him later just on the physical ability, but I don't like him anywhere
I
where
would
he
take
would
Shador
actually get
Sanders
drafted.
at pick 43.
Yeah, I don't
first
believe
round
that
grade on
Shador
either
Sanders can be an good NFL quarterback. I don't like Jackson Dart, even though I think he's got plenty of arm.
Oh no, he's
Don't
got
like
all
J-
the talent. If you watched Old Miss, you'd understand that
Yeah, he had the best receivers ever. I don't believe
they
I
had
don't
the
like
best
Jackson.
team ever. You watch the
Yeah.
Ole Miss, and it's like, oh, what was their problem? It was their quarterback would, and I mean this in the most almost authentic way. Let's just call it Paul Pierce his pants anytime the game got tight. I mean, he was the problem. He was 100% the issue. He was their Kyle McCord, Ohio State 2023. It's like, oh, all of these things are perfect, except we don't have the most important job figured out. And so our entire season is going to collapse around that. I wouldn't draft Jackson Dart if you paid me to do it.
I think
I
he
don't
could
want
have an
anything to do with
NFL career. I just don't
Absolutely
think he's going to
can.
be great.
There's also
Mil-
off the field stuff. There's something weird going on.
Milroe's not a quarterback. I mean, he
disagree. He had a terrible Senior Bowl. I gotta give
terrible
it that.
Senior Bowl, but there's he's made some amazing throws. I mean, go look at the Isaiah Bond throw that won the Iron Bowl. That was one of the great throws I've seen.
Milton and not at least see. I mean, listen, it's different levels of athleticism, particularly with the arm.
Totally different.
Joe Milton's spraying the ball everywhere. It doesn't matter that he can throw 70 yards if you can't put it on anybody. At least Jalen Milroe can run an offense.
Jalen Milroe's got the smallest hands in the history of the combine. I mean, he's got tiny little hands. He doesn't control the
tiny
football.
little hands.
He's got like 8 1/4 inch hands.
Joe Burrow's got like barely 9 inches.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch the Senior Bowl? He was terrible.
Oh, no, he was awful. He was legitimately
terrible.
awful.
And if you watched Alabama is the most talented team in the country that didn't even make the playoffs. So I mean, come on.
He did not have a good year. But I will say this:
he's not a quarterback.
Coming into the season, Jalen Milroe was considered a fringe first-round pick, if not the first guy off the board. Okay, we cannot so overcorrect off of 1 year that he's now not a quarterback. Like if Jalen Milroe's sitting there in the 4th or the 5th round, you take him.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, he will, but he's not going there. He's going to be drafted. He's probably going to go somewhere in the day 2, late day 2, and
I'd still take him there.
I don't like him. I don't think much of him.
When the alternative is Jackson Dart or Dylan Gabriel.
Most of these guys are bad. I mean, first of all, you got to remember this. If it seems like we're being negative or I'm being negative, the reality is that there's way more failures, right? So most of the guys can't
quarterback class.
So you got to be able to find the diamond in the rough because most of the guys can't do it. All right,
who's the diamond in the rough?
Okay, so I like this is who I like. I like Cam Ward.
Yeah.
I like Quinn Ewers.
Okay.
I like. I mean, Tyler Shugg throws a great ball, but I don't like him.
Nope.
Will Howard has great stature and speed. There's something I don't like about him.
There's something you don't like. It's his punchable face, but I don't like his face either.
He's
And
okay. He's okay.
And the fact that K-State was cool with him leaving isn't ideal, but the dude put together one of the most impeccable quarterbacking performances you'll ever see on the path to a national championship. I mean, he was awesome. He was awesome. Now he's surrounded by unbelievable players. You bet your ass he is.
Yeah, he's got incredible talent. Yeah,
I'm
going to bet against. I'll say no on Howard, no on Shug, no on Dylan Gabriel. I kind of like Kyle McCord from Syracuse. Throws the ball well. He can
rip it. He can rip it.
And I kind of like this kid Taylor Elgersma from Laurier, who's 6'6", 215. Yes,
he can rip it.
He absolutely can rip it, and not only that, he's a really athletic kid from an athletic family. So
someone's going to see some Josh Allen in him.
Even though I shouldn't, I kind of like Riley Leonard. I don't know why, but I kind of like Riley Leonard.
Camp arm.
But I'll tell you the guy that I'm really liking the more I watch him.
Memphis.
I like Brady Cook.
Oh, Brady Cook. Listen, now we're talking.
I like Brady Cook.
Would you draft Brady Cook?
Yes, I would draft Brady Cook in the 7th round. I like Brady Cook. There's something about Brady Cook that I really like. Now, to me, now I've watched enough football now I've decided that if you don't have mobility, you can't play for me. And I can't go with these pocket passer guys only. It's got to be you got to move. I mean, I know I said I like Flacco. You have to be able to get me
a first round. You have to be able to convert a third and long.
You got to be able to run, and preferably you got to be able to run well.
Yes.
And I like Brady Cook. He runs well. Yep. He runs well. He went to a good high school. He's a good kid. He's the captain of the team.
Oh, yeah.
He's a scholar athlete.
Mm-hmm.
He's an academic honor roll. They carted him off in a game, and he came back and won the game.
Yep.
When I see his teammates interviewed about him, they talk about him in terms that are like they would run through fire for him.
Oh, yeah.
This guy's got a master's degree in business administration.
From the best business administration school. No, I'm kidding. But
but I'm just saying he's graduated. He's mature. He's played a lot of college football. Peter, this guy's played 47 college football games. He's smart. He's athletic. He's a winner. Missouri won. He was an MVP of multiple bowl games.
I'm
not telling you. No, I'm not telling you. I'm not. I know you're a Missouri
47, fan. As if I didn't watch every snap of them.
I like Brady Cook in this draft. Yeah. Am I crazy to like Brady Cook?
You're asking the wrong guy if you're looking for an objective opinion on your insanity, because I'm totally pilled with you. Brady Cook is the one guy in this class, and I mean this because I have an exceptional understanding of Brady Cook, and I can get into the warts. Don't get me wrong. He is the one guy in this class who has the chance from going in the 200s to being a number one on a team this year, and a guy who just consistently wins, right? He doesn't do anything exceptionally, but he does everything right. Now, I will say this. He plays the game. It looks a little fast for him at times. He doesn't deliver the ball on time and with accuracy all the time. He allows pressure to get into his face a little bit more than it probably was, which is ironic because he had really good offensive lines in front of him in a lot of years. Now, going up against SEC level defensive lines, okay, you're going to lose some, no question about it. But Brady Cook, a lot of times you'd be like, damn, like that he's kind of throwing ducks out there, because he played injured a lot because he was toughing out first downs when plays broke down. And this is a guy who the last 2 years won 22 games for Missouri.
At Missouri in the SEC.
Okay, let's not say it with such a pejorative tone, but
but seriously, Missouri, the SEC, You know me, I'm an A&M fan. You know, going to the SEC is a rude awakening. It's not as easy as you think.
And so, like last year, they got their ass kicked by A&M. Well, Brady Cook wasn't in that game. They got their ass kicked by Alabama. He got knocked out of that game too. You think back to the year prior, they lose one game. Who was it? It was to Georgia, and they were winning in the fourth quarter of that game at Georgia, right? Because Brady Cook stayed healthy. Now, they also had a great running back and a great offensive line, and Luther Burden's on that team and all that stuff. Like, it wasn't just Brady Cook, but the fact of the matter is, you look now and the revisionist history of Brock Purdy is, oh, well, all he did was win at a program that shouldn't have been winning. But then we just sort of presumed like, oh, well, Iowa State's actually a good team. Well, it wasn't when Brock Purdy showed up. Missouri wasn't a good team.
They went 1-9 in the conference the year after he left.
That's right. And Missouri was not a good situation before Brady Cook showed up and became the starting quarterback there. All he did was win. All he did was fight through injuries and all these things. All the negatives, there is something to be said for character. There is something to be said for being a leader of men. There is something to be said for, having a complete understanding on Monday through Saturday of everything that's happening on the field. And Eli Drinkowitz, whatever you might think about him, the Missouri head coach, he's a dork. There's no question about it, but he's also an elite recruiter. And I think a hell of a schematic guy who, if for nothing else, can really pick coordinators, right? He's lost great coordinators. Head coach at Tennessee was his offensive coordinator. Like they do a great job of finding coaches. That tells me that he has a really good X's and O's eye beyond everything else that he does. He has said that Brady Cook is like his favorite player of all time, that Brady Cook is the kind of quarterback that he would, want his daughters to marry and all these things. Like, he can't speak enough. He was probably too loyal to Brady Cook at times. And ultimately all that paid off in was the two best seasons of Missouri football since Gary Pinkel retired. So you're not in any way wrong when you're getting sort of this incomplete package but you see all of these elements of excellence and you just see a residue of winning and you hear all these positive things. If that's not worth a flyer, just as much as the great athletes and the guys who produce at the highest level, and sometimes those two things don't align and you're wondering which one's true. Oh, did he just beat up on weaker competition because, he's kind of a merchant of the mid-majors, or is this a guy who's super twitched up but never produced because he wasn't given the opportunity? All these things. When you're asking those questions in the later rounds, why wouldn't you take a flyer on a dude who, quarterback, all he did was win?
He beat Iowa in the bowl game.
Well, I don't know if we should hold that up as some exceptional thing. I do know he beat Ohio State. Now,
Iowa's a pretty well coached team.
Yeah, well, they were missing their best running back in that game. That was a weird game too, but it was if you want to use that game as a testament for Brady Cook, that was a game that could have gotten out of hand in Iowa's favor early. Iowa was completely dominating Missouri on the lines of scrimmage early in that game, and Brady Cook found something and pulled them back into it. And I'm going to say this now, clip it. It's going to sound fucking stupid in a year. I'm telling you right now, there is 1% Tom Brady and Brady Cook. There's just 1% in there where it never fucking lined up for Tom. He just kept winning games and he just kept getting disrespected the whole time. And I'll line up first. You never want to see the Mizzou text message chains I'm on when it comes to Brady Cook, because we were working every angle of that gambit. Worst quarterback we've ever seen to I will die for Brady Cook. And we were doing that in the middle of games. I mean, it was just up and down. Tom Brady was never given a lick of respect for winning consistently. All he do is come into games and win them consistently for Michigan. Oh, well, now we're going to bring in Drew Henson, or, oh, it's Brian Griese's team and all this. And he went in the 6th round because, well, he's not athletic enough, this and that. There is 1%, just 1% of Tom Brady and Brady Cook. And it's not the namesake aspect of it, to where it just like there's that, maybe 5% in Brock Purdy, where it's just like, at some point, there is something about the position of quarterback that cannot be fully explained by statistics or measurables or anything like that. At some point, you have to be a leader of men. Sometimes you have to be a coach on the field. This guy has that it. And he might have nothing else, and it might flame out, and he's playing for the St. Louis Battlehawks in the XFL by the time this is all said and done. But there is just this inkling of you can't kill him, and so he's going to keep winning. So, Larry, to answer your question, I would also take Brady Cook.
Wow. I'm glad I asked. Because I did like Brock Purdy a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago. So
when they took Purdy last, you're like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. What's the
Brady
downside?
Cook. Remember that. Go check out Brady Cook, everybody. Go check out Brady Cook.
I feel like I'm flying too close to the sun. This is a very careful Icarus moment where it's just like we're talking Brady Cook, and I'm like, maybe I'm blinded by allegiance. I don't know.
A couple more things before we get out of here.
Okay.
Matt Barrows says Robert Saleh is putting on the full court press to re-sign Dre Greenlaw. I say amen, brother. What do you say?
I think that we are entering a dangerous territory there because what the 49ers really need, and listen, this very well could be Dre Greenlaw. I feel like we're operating in an emotional realm right now. I feel like we all love Dre Greenlaw. We all think very highly of him as a person. We all clearly understand what Dre Greenlaw means to this defense. I don't know if that Dre Greenlaw exists anymore. He couldn't get through a game this past season. Now, is it a tall ask? Absolutely. And did they have to shut him down for his own benefit? You bet. But he couldn't get through a game last year. And what the Niners need more than anything else right now is someone they can flip and rely on at weak side linebacker. Can they just get someone who can play all the damn snaps? Like, just go and get Jamie Sherwood. Just go get the kid from the Jets and move on and just say, we love you, Dre Greenlaw. Best of luck to you. I don't think there's going to be that robust of a market for him. So maybe he does come back. But I don't think he can be relied on moving forward. He tore his Achilles. His game is predicated on explosion. And if he's constantly, I'm on, off the field, and you just can't trust him to stay on the field, well, now you've allocated serious, Pro Bowl level money or something equivalent to that, $6, $7, $8 million a year at the low end to somebody who's going to give you 60% of the snaps, 70% of the snaps on a best case scenario. Like, it's just dangerous. This team needs to get younger and they need to get faster. And as much as everyone loves Dre Greenlaw, and we can separate that from the fact that you just can't trust Dre Greenlaw to ever be the same Dre Greenlaw that we fell in love with. Get younger, get faster, take that money, go get Sherwood.
There's a reason that Robert Saleh is desperate for this guy, because he understands that this is the culture player in the room. Every room's got a culture player, and this is their guy. So,
but you don't.
I would re-sign him.
Culture so lacking, like
you need someone to pass that on. You need someone to pass it on. If you have a player that can pass on your standard, then you can have a bunch of new young players come in and they play at the standard that this guy set.
Fred Warner for if he can't be that guy.
Dre's. I mean, to me, Dre is the most violent guy, and so the most violent guy usually is the leader. I don't know. I get the view. I would bring him back for. I don't want to bring him back for 3 years, but I'd bring him back for 1 or 2 years at low money. But I'm talking.
That's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to do. But if what you just said is right, which is there's not much of a market for him, then it won't be as hard to do.
No, and I get that. I have no problem with bringing Dre Greenlaw back. I just don't want them to put all of their eggs in that basket. And by getting him, it's almost implicitly doing that because of what he's going to cost. And you have to spread your money around a little bit more. And if you can only get one weak side linebacker, I'm not going for the guy who tore his Achilles in February of 2024 and who couldn't come back on the field and give you a full game, even though when he was on the field, it was spectacular. If you can get him on the Ben Barch deal, hell yeah, like do it, duh. But younger, faster, he does not really apply to either of them. And if you don't trust your locker room to be able to handle your standard because you don't have Dre Greenlaw, like you don't say the same thing about Talanoa Hufanga. And also, like, what are you paying Nick Bosa and Fred Warner for all that money if they can't uphold that standard? So
Greenlaw is the one exception. I understand you make some moves at it with your head, other moves with your heart. This is a smart move. because you're going to have to find the Eugene Asantes, the Chandler Martins, the David Bendas, the Demetrius Knights. You're going to have to find the young, fast linebackers to take over for Dre Greenlaw, but you're also going to have to pass that down. And I think that's the guy that I would absolutely want to keep. That's the one guy that I would try to keep around. The rest of the guys, because I really do believe he's that vitally important. Let's jump to the receivers. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Came out this week. There's a report Houston wants Deebo. All the media people ran up to D'Amico and Indy and were like, hey, there's reports that you guys want Deebo. And he's like, hey, I like good players, and Deebo's a good player.
Of course.
So he didn't run from it. Yeah. And then there's been weird reports about Diana Rossini, who either doesn't understand the NFL salary cap or we don't understand the NFL salary cap, because to me, the last guy that I would think has any trade market at all is the overpaid receiver coming off of a career devastating injury. But, her report is lots of teams are showing interest, and John Lynch basically corroborated that. Yeah. So, he obviously didn't want to talk about it because he changed the subject, but what's going on here? I mean, to me, it's like Deebo has no trade value, and Ayuk doesn't really either.
Right.
I don't see you could make an argument that they're be smarter to keep Deebo than get rid of him, but they seem like
too late
intent on moving him.
Right.
Lynch keeps making it seem like there's a real market for Deebo. I don't understand what's going on here. I mean,
he's got to pretend that there is.
Part of your job as the general manager is not just to build the team. Part of your job is to manage expectations, and that's why Farhan Zaidi's out of a job, because he was the worst at managing expectations.
They didn't have the best rotation in baseball last year.
But I mean, this guy was like, there is no stone that we won't, unturn to get the great players that we need to get. There is no limit to the amount of greatness that we can acquire. And then it's like AJ Pollock and, thanks for coming. So Farhan was the worst guy ever at hey, you got to undersell and over deliver. But if you've never done sales in your life, you don't know that. But sales is a part of so many aspects of life that there's all kinds of people that have never done sales that understand the concept of under promise and over deliver. Mm-hmm. Heck, I mean, if you've ever had kids, you're finding out now. You don't walk in the room and be like, we're going to Disneyland, and then be like, you know what? We're going to go to Golden Gate Park instead. And going to Golden Gate Park is a great outing for the family, but it's not on the heels of we're going to Disneyland.
Right.
So you got to temper expectations. You got to under promise and over deliver. That's just a basic tenet of reasonable life. But Farhan didn't get it, and he's out of a gig. Why is John Lynch kind of not promising anything, but why wouldn't he just say, hey, you know what? We're moving on and we're not going to get anything. And it's just, instead it's like there is a lot of interest. Yeah. I mean, eventually they're going to have to get real, and it's going to go from there's a lot of interest to no interest overnight, I would imagine. But
there's a lot of interest in Deebo Samuel. There's not a lot of interest in trading for Deebo Samuel. There's a difference.
Then why wouldn't they? If there's no interest in trading for him, why is he on the team?
Well, because there's no reason to also make a move. If somebody, something can happen, a domino can fall. This Matt Stafford thing could turn into something or nothing, and the Niners don't have to do anything until March 21st, the day before that bonus is due.
So you think they're going to cut him on March 21st?
I think they'll actually do it before free agency out of decency. I think that they'll cut him sometime between now and the 12th, which is when NFL free agency opens. And they'll just allow him to be a free agent at that point, because he was a one-time offensive player of the year, and they want to, so
decent. They're cutting Deebo, and then so what is your take on Ayuk? Is it that Diana Rossini's the worst reporter of all time?
I don't know if we have to get to that extreme.
I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, what do you? I mean,
listen,
are you saying
I've
that
gotten
what do you make of her report? Her report is there's lots of teams sniffing around Brandon Ayuk. What does that mean?
It means that the 49ers aren't beholden. Well, first off, I'll tell you this. It's that the 49ers did not have consensus on giving Brandon Ayuk a $30 million a year contract when they did. Why did they end up giving Brandon Ayuk that contract? Because Kyle freaked out at the last second and hammered it home, right? Kyle just said, I'm going to stay out of it. I'm going to stay out of it. It's no big deal. This has happened now a couple of times, by the way. It's like, I'm going to stay out of it. We don't need to, I don't handle that stuff. I leave that stuff to John. And then John and Parag and others in the front office have these principles and these standards. And, Kyle's out here and he's the one getting asked questions about it all day. So now he's ornery about it. And, now I have to talk to him because I'm the guy who runs the relationships with my players. And so now I have to talk to him because he's around every day while he was holding out. That was super fun for everybody. So now I got to talk to him about his social media shit and I got to deal with all this stuff. And then, okay, so here's the plan. John and the guys upstairs, they came up with this plan where we're going to put him on the exempt list. So we're just going to nullify his year and we're going to run it back next year. And he can either sign the last contract that we offered him, which was around $27.5 to $28 million a year, which is the number that everyone with the Niners was comfortable with, or we can put him on the exempt list, or we can trade him to the Steelers right now. Those are your three options, Brandon. And he said none. And Kyle did not expect him to call their bluff, and he freaked out. They had some 2-hour meeting, and the next thing you know, Brandon Ayuk leaves with $30 million because Kyle just wanted it over, and it's not his money. That's happened now again a couple of times, and that left a little bit of a sour taste in everybody's mouth because Brandon Ayuk won, and he won emphatically. He lost 0 points in the transaction. He paid no price for all of his bullshit between the end of the Super Bowl and the time that he signed the contract. And all he did was embarrass the 49ers organization, embarrass himself in the process. All he did was make everyone's life a living hell, and he paid no cost for it. In fact, he won. He got more out of doing all of that than he lost. And there are a lot of people with the 49ers who are, they're not a leaky organization. They are more than happy to talk about this, some folks, where they're just like, that's bullshit, and we don't like how that looks. And now that Brandon Ayuk isn't around if someone wants to talk about Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers are more than open because there is some serious buyer's remorse because there was buyer's remorse before he was even bought.
Yeah, but are you saying that they're open to taking a $30 or $40 million cap hit to move him on?
No, they're not. But if someone wants to offer them a contract there is a way that you can make it like an NBA deal where maybe there's something that can happen there. But ultimately, it's not going to happen because no one's going to offer that because Brandon Ayuk's value is low because he's coming off of a ACL injury and he's
and it's not just an ACL; it's an ACL, MCL, meniscus.
His entire flipping knee exploded in week 7. So no one's trading for Brandon Ayuk.
When's he coming back then? I'm thinking November. I'm thinking Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It would be that late. I mean, I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be in the first half of the season. And knowing that the Niners will probably have a week 9 bye, it'll probably be week 10 at the earliest, right? I think we'll just do the Christian McCaffrey thing. At least we'll have a head start on it this year, though.
Debo's going to get cut, and they're getting nothing for him. Ayuk's going to be going nowhere because nobody wants him.
Ayuk is
he's probably going to be back around Thanksgiving.
Ayuk's going to have a Dre Greenlaw style year.
They're going to need another receiver. That's for sure.
2.
Okay, a couple more. Is Juice coming back? Lynch talked this week, but, he kind of dodged on Juice. He's one of us and this and that, but we got tough decisions to make. It sounded like, to me, he's like, hey, we respect Juice, we love Juice, but we can't afford Juice. Goodbye, Juice. That's what I got out of that. What did you get out of that?
I don't think Kyle's going to let Juice walk out the door. I think that they do another pay cut. I also don't think that Kyle Juszczyk has a big marketplace on the outside. But, what are the Niners going to do if they don't – Kyle can't just find a fullback. There's still.
How about invent one? The Ravens did. They invented Patrick Ricard. Invent one. Turn JJ Pegues into one.
But the difference is that Kyle Juszczyk can play all the other positions now, not at the high rate that he used to be able to. But
Draft a running back, make Garendo the fullback. He's like 15 pounds lighter. Why can't Isaac Garendo do everything? Who's way better athlete, way faster? Why can't he do everything that Juice does?
Well, he's never been a lead blocker, and that is.
But how often does Juice lead block? Honestly, how many times? How many times do you think he did that this year? 3 times, 4 times?
No, it was more than that, and also. There is a certain aspect of being. He's also the move tight end. He's playing H-back as much as he's playing fullback, and all these things. Like he is.
Garendo, I think, is a better receiver.
There's no question about that. Yeah. But there is something to be said for being an additional blocker and understanding angles and attack. Juszczyk's ability to understand all the nuances of every position is still a very valuable skill to Kyle Shanahan, who does not want to leave 21 personnel. And there was some suggestion, perhaps I even suggested it, based on some conversations, that last year they might go to a more 11 personnel look, a little bit more Rams moving forward as to help out Brock. They certainly moved full-time to shotgun as to help out Brock. That just didn't materialize. There's no backup for Kyle. There's no, Drake Nugent, some guy who's hanging out on the practice squad that can come in as a fullback. There's no market for fullbacks around the NFL. The reason teams are inventing them is because they strictly do not exist. And I don't think that Kyle at that position is going to take, an undersized tight end or an oversized running back and say, oh, can you learn this? Like Kyle Juszczyk will be the first to tell you that he went to Harvard. That kind of cognitive ability, you don't have to go to Harvard. You can go to Missouri, or you can go to Weber State. Doesn't matter to me. But like he does see the game a little bit differently than most other people. And he is an offensive coordinator of sorts on the field. That is a level of comprehension and understanding that is not requisite to being an NFL player if you just play one spot. I just don't think that they have a Swiss Army knife, but I'll give you something here, Larry, because I'm bloviating on Kyle Juszczyk smarts. Here's what you do. You get rid of Kyle Juszczyk and you sign yourself a Taysom Hill.
Yeah, there you go. Or, there's other guys. There's a lot of different guys. You can create a player. I'll tell you a guy that I really love. Now, I don't know. He's not a fullback. Okay, he's a tight end. But I really love him. I think he's a perfect fit for the Niners. Is Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, who started at Yale and is very smart and yet has great ball skills and is a pretty decent blocker. He's 6'4", 250.
I can buy that.
Probably going to be there on day 3. That'd be wonderful if you can bring him in and you can build it up into it. But then you still need that fullback to be there, just in the same way you need Dre Greenlaw to instill a certain mentality into your defense, and defense is all about mentality. Like you need a Kyle Juszczyk there to basically be like, hey, here's how we do this. It's such a specific and bespoke role. The idea of bringing in even, a guy who used to go to Yale and went to, going to Georgia Tech in and of itself is wildly impressive. Like that's an Ivy League caliber school. Like, even bringing in that guy, like that doesn't mean that he just now knows all of the nuance of that job. And I think that job is a lot more nuanced and difficult than people give it credit for. Maybe I've been, totally brainwashed by the 21 personnel, crew, but I think you need a smart player. I think you need a smart player, but I also think when you're paying this guy and you've got a Pro Bowl fullback, and I'm watching him at the Pro Bowl, but then you got a fullback that's a Pro Bowler, right. But you can't run on short yardage and can't run on the goal line.
I'm with you.
Some of these things
with you.
Some of these things are goddamn unacceptable. And it's like,
I agree.
Bottom line is, why are you losing your job? You're losing your job because you're not doing your job.
Correct.
And he's not doing his job. So I got no problem moving on from him.
I just think that they needed to be a year ahead of this. And I think that they, in so many ways, they've messed up again and again and again. They, restructured deep. They failed to heed the teachings of Bill Walsh, as if they shouldn't be, everything Bill Walsh said, everything in the score takes care of itself, should be up on a goddamn wall somewhere in the facility so that everyone has to look at it every day, because the man spoke truths. And it's better to be a year early than a year late. And they are a year late on so many things because they tried to run this thing back, which had clearly expired at the moment the Super Bowl was over. You knew that that was their best shot. And they said, no, I think we can do it one more time. And now they're having to pay for the sins of that hubris in, like, do we keep Kyle Juszczyk for another year so that he can teach this puppy how to be a big dog? Because
Lynch said they got to get. Lynch says you got to get younger. Get younger here. Fuck, go get a new fullback. He's old.
That's the one position that it's dangerous to get young at fast, because there's no reason to then put him on the field. Then you might as well just get rid of the position. This is a strictly, we can eliminate your position if we don't have you situation. And they need that position still, because I don't think Kyle's willing to leave it. So
I'd use Garendo there. Use Garendo. He's faster, and isolate him. Use him. Throw the ball more to the fullback. Get him isolated a little bit more. I like the idea. I think it's a major mismatch. Garendo is a great receiver. Yeah. And if you can use Garendo, who's got 4.3 speed and a great receiver, as the receiver, go get a big lineman to be the lead blocker.
But now
I'd rather go that
that's the difference.
Route.
Now you're giving it away, because now you're showing specifically what you're going to do on every play.
Well, then mix it up. Mix it up. Sometimes.
But that's the entire point of a Kyle Juszczyk. Now, I agree with you that it doesn't carry the same weight, but the entire point of a Kyle Juszczyk is he can be on anything on any play, and that puts the defense inherently in conflict, because the versatility of the defense is now counteracted by a versatility of the offense, not just with your running back and your wide back, or whatever the hell you want to call him, wide receiver, but also now because you have a fullback in the backfield, which becomes sort of the queen chess piece on the board. The problem is it can only move 1 or 2 spaces at a time, it seems. And the idea of just saying, okay, well, we're going to put Refrigerator Perry back there to be a lead blocker is fun in concept, until you realize, well, now they can go into a base set every time that they see that happen and get away with it.
It doesn't seem to burn the Ravens, who have Patrick Ricard, a converted offensive lineman.
That's because they run 65% of the time.
He's the all-pro.
There is no nuance to their game, though. Like, the Ravens don't do anything other than run the ball. Their entire thing is we run the ball. And the times that they pass the ball, they run the ball. So, like, there's no issue with giving away the game plan. Everyone goes into a game with Baltimore knowing that they're going to run it down their throats. So put the biggest motherfucker you can find out there. It doesn't matter. You're not fooling anybody. The whole
it's
point
time
of
to
Kyle's
move off of
offense is to fool
Juszczyk. It's time to move off of Juszczyk. You won 6 fucking games. You won 6 fucking games.
I'm not
and you can't run the ball on the goal line. And he doesn't really do anything. And he fumbled in the biggest moment. And he makes too much cash. And there's tons of other guys you could get that are cheaper and younger. And and to me, it's no doubt. All right, let's move on. Jake Moody. The Niners still believe in Jake Moody.
Yeah, well, they're going to pay the price for it.
I mean, why? Why do they still believe in Jake Moody? Why are they so? I mean, we always say this. Oh, Kyle is stubborn. Kyle and Lynch are stubborn if they still believe in Jake Moody. I mean, you made a bad pick. It's okay. It's a third-round pick. Take the L, move on, go sign a veteran kicker, get down the road. Oh my God, they're gonna bring this whole thing back and try to make it really was the injury and he hurt the ankle and all. Really? That to me is the first question of 2025 that I'm like, that one makes no sense.
No, it's sunk cost fallacy, as Brady Cook, who has a business administration degree, would tell you. That's one of the first things they teach you in business school, sunk cost fallacies. This is just textbook. They might as well put it next to the sunk cost fallacy. Oh, we used a third-round pick on a kicker. We better get it right. All you're doing is proving how wrong you were every single day. Oh, well, it was the injury. Okay, cool. Here's the other thing, and I've heard this suggested from a few people who are maybe a bit of Moody apologists closer to the scenes. Like, oh, well, he's going to have a great career somewhere else. That's what always happens. You cut him, and then he's going to have a great career somewhere else. I don't give a shit. Is he going to have a great career here? No, he's not. Sorry, it's not going to happen. Maybe it's something psychosomatic to the point where, hey, he can't kick here anymore. He's got too many ghosts, and he'll never be able to do it here. If he can't do it here, what the hell do I care if he does it anywhere else? I'm not building anybody else's team. He might do it for the Seahawks. great. Here's all you need to ask about a kicker.
How many Niner fans are walking around going, we used to have Andy Lee. Andy Lee. Nobody knows or cares that Andy Lee was a Niner once and has gone on for a long NFL career. There's nobody's clenching their teeth about Andy Lee.
Yeah,
nobody
is. It is simply idiocy that they can't just move on from this guy, cut him, let him go somewhere else. Who cares what happens? You know why? Because none of these kickers, the two best kickers in the league are guys who weren't kicking professionally 2 years ago. The best kicker in the league is Bandon Aubrey. He was like, what was he doing? He was a soccer player. The next best kicker in the league is this Bates kid he was laying brick. He was selling brick, laying brick. He was doing something, but sure as hell wasn't kicking a football. Those are the two best kickers in the league. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Get rid of the guy.
So now we're saying we don't want him. Who do we want? I'll say this. I kind of like Caden Davis from Ole Miss. He's got a big leg, man. He really does. I mean, I know he missed. I saw him miss in one of the All-Star games, but he's got a big leg. I mean, if I really don't want to go rookie kicker, I really don't. I would go pay $5 million for Jason Sanders if he's free. But if Jason Sanders isn't, based on the kickers I've seen this year, I kind of like Caden Davis from Ole Miss. Other than that, I can't really say anything. I haven't seen enough of any of the other kickers.
I'd go get
the
Riley
Michigan
Patterson.
kicker's not bad. He wasn't
Moody?
bad. But no, the kicker this year for Michigan wasn't bad.
No, yeah. I mean, that's cool.
I don't even see him on the list here. But Borregales from Miami, they think is a top kicker. Ryan Fitzgerald from Florida State.
I think we've lost the privilege. Go get that Wright kid back. He was good until he got injured.
He didn't have a strong leg, but he was accurate.
You know who else didn't have a strong leg? The only good kicker Kyle Shanahan has ever had. Like Robbie Gould, you couldn't do anything outside of 50, but damned if he didn't knock them all through. God, I did not like Robbie Gould. I did not care for it, but
he made him. He
made him, and so you can't argue with success. I really liked Riley Patterson when coming out of Memphis when he was drafted. He's been on roughly 42 NFL teams since then. I think Riley Patterson still got something.
Two last topics, and then we're going to jump. Coaching staff changes. We've gotten this far. We have not talked about any of the coaching staff changes. They did make a number of them.
Yeah.
The biggest one is Brian Greasy has opted to leave coaching, and that one's not a real surprise to me. No. John Lynch also added his son to the coaching staff. I know people would say, oh, it's nepotism, but I'll say that is the true bottom of the barrel job is defensive quality control. That is the bottom. So it's like that, there's GAs in college, grad assistants, and the lowest job in the NFL is quality control, and usually defensive quality control is even lower than offensive quality control. So, I mean, Jake played linebacker at UW. He went to Stanford. He's a pretty sharp kid, I would imagine, and it's not like he didn't play football. So I don't really take anybody who took issue with that. I would say, I'd push back on that. What do you think's
going on here? Yeah,
I mean, that doesn't bother me. I mean, if he made him, I don't know, the assistant GM and fired Bob Myers and Jerry West.
If you were
then I'd be like, hey, that's not wise. But to say that you have him as the defensive quality control coach after he played college football, worked at UW as a GA. You know what? That to me is absolutely where you would start.
I can't believe that John Lynch is going to get his son a $65,000 a year job. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? I mean, nepotism in its highest form. Am I wrong?
Working 120 hours to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, how do you think Kyle Shanahan got his gig?
Yeah.
His dad called Monty Kiffin and said, "Get my kid a job." That's what happened. Worked out A-okay.
But did you have any thoughts on any of the coaching changes? Is there anything that you looked at and said, hey, that's significant?
Significant, no. It is interesting that former Chargers coach Mike McCoy was not brought on to the staff because I thought that they had to maintain one ex-Chargers head coach doing something nebulous at all
Bobby
times.
Ross wasn't available.
Right. Like
Dan Henning said no.
The Anthony Lynn Fellowship for coaches who we're not quite sure what they do, I guess, is going to be vacant this year. Though I guess Gus Bradley was a defensive coordinator there, so maybe he fills that job of like, what is it you do here? No one can really quite say. And you also used to work for the Chargers. So now, yeah, I'll say this. I like Leonard Hankerson. I think Leonard Hankerson is a hell of a coach. I like Leonard Hankerson on a personal, like I like Leonard Hankerson.
Good Hurricane.
Good Hurricane. It's all about the U, baby.
Yep.
And, so I'm happy that Leonard, I guess, got a little bit of a bump. They had to put it on the list somehow. So more Leonard Hankerson in our life. I like it.
It didn't surprise me Greasy called it quits either.
No. He'd been teasing it for a long time.
It's a tough gig for hours, man. It's just a tough gig. I don't know how to explain it. It's just.
I don't think his family moved out here either. I might be wrong on that, but I had heard that.
You do it for a year, but you do it for 2 years. Also, it's a job, and then you're spending big time hours. It's just totally different. And he was a damn good broadcaster, so like he could probably go back and do major college football and get jobs.
I mean, how telling was it that he turned down an opportunity to interview as a head coach, right? Like he's just like, I don't like this. And you know what? Credit to him. He clearly
is a player, man.
This is it's a great position to be in to where you don't need the money. And he doesn't have, and this is going to come across as negative. I mean this really honestly in the highest possible form of praise. Like he didn't need to move up the ladder. He could have, right? He could have been, who knows? He could have put himself in positions publicly to where it's like, I'm the guy who found Brock Purdy, and now I'm an offensive coordinator somewhere who's calling plays, or now I'm a head coaching candidate. He could have tried to move up the ladder. He was a good enough coach, and he certainly has a good enough track record in his 3 years to where he could have done that. He didn't need it. He didn't need that admiration. He didn't need that. He liked what he was doing, but he also didn't need it. And it wasn't ends to justify, the means weren't justifying an ends here. It wasn't going for something else. So he can go do whatever. And you know what? If he takes a year off, because he doesn't need the money by all accounts, if he takes a year off and he goes, you know what, I actually really did like that, there'll be 20 other teams that are like, hey, you want a job? So like, what a great position to be in. Brian Griese's the only one who seems to have this all figured out. Do it for as long as you want and then stop doing it because you don't need it. And the second you don't need it is the second that everyone wants you.
We're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. Dieter back in the house on a Thursday night. We're glad to see him here. We're, of course, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner, sports cards and collectibles. Great sports card place down in Pacific Grove along the Monterey Peninsula. If you're down there in Monterey, check them out. Go call my friend Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264. He's got a really cool card and collectible store, and it's a really cool thing. And then also thanks to Mancini's for being a proud sponsor of our Krug Show. If you shop at Mancini's, whether you go online or visit in store, use that code KRUG10 and you'll save 10% on your mattress purchase across the board. So you buy a $4,000 mattress, you're going to save $400 just because you know me and typed in KRUG10, KRUEG 10, and you'll get 10% off your mattress at any Mancini location or online at sleepworld.com. We're going to have one last thing, and I'm going to ask Dieter just either for a final thought or a player that excites you with the draft coming up. But let me just hit these supers, and then we will get that last topic here.
Sounds good.
We got this one from Johnny C. He says, Larry, a brief word on what makes filet your steak of choice, if you would. What? And keep grinding. Just awesome to watch your meteoric growth on YouTube. Well, thank you, Johnny C. First of all, I don't know that filet necessarily is my steak of choice. I think if I were going to like a Ruth Chris Steakhouse or a Morton's or a Luger's or one of these Fleming's or one of these places, and I love a good steak, but I think I would go like, maybe Country T-Bone, something like that.
Porterhouse. I mean, it's Porterhouse. It's a bigger tenderloin.
I know,
it's a bigger tenderloin on a T-bone. I mean, how hard is this? You get the strip and a larger tenderloin. It's the Porterhouse.
It's a bigger steak. But I like a Country T-bone with a bone in.
Porterhouse has a bone in.
But you don't like you'd rather have a porterhouse than a T-bone? How about a ribeye?
I love ribeye, But
There's a lot of fat in ribeye.
Yeah, well, that's why it's good. But
That's good.
a porterhouse is a T-bone with a larger tenderloin. So you're getting the same strip, but you're getting a larger tenderloin. It's just a bigger T-bone. So you go with the porterhouse.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
I'm getting offended now.
Well, it's Midwest to me, Laird. You know?
It's funny, all these people going to the combine. I'm seeing all these pictures of steaks left and right. Is a Midwestern steak better than a West Coast steak?
Yes, most cows over here are grass-fed. Most cows in the Midwest are corn-fed. So the Western steak's better for you, and the Midwestern steak tastes better.
Okay. People are talking about how some of these restaurants are big on like shrimp cocktail back there. I'm like,
y'all don't know about St. Elmo's?
Well, I've heard about the shrimp cocktail. Is it like I do personally like shrimp cocktail.
Love a good shrimp
with
cocktail.
A spicy. If you can get me a spicy horseradish filled,
that's what St. Elmo's is all about, baby.
Really?
Yeah.
I like
the trick with St. Elmo's is to not go to St. Elmo's, but to go to the restaurant next to it, which is also St. Elmo's, but not called St. Elmo's. That's the trick.
Really? Look at you.
Some other,
It's insider knowledge.
I spend time in Indianapolis. Lucky me.
Let's talk food. His story at 1849 says 49ers don't have the luxury of selecting the best available at pick 11. There's so many needs at multiple positions, and getting younger is the goal. Seventh oldest team in the NFL. Go quantity versus quality. They don't have the luxury of selecting best available. They're going to be tied into a need. If you have so many needs, then why would you be tied in to one need? What they really need, let's be honest about this. Let's simplify. What is going to build the 49ers back into that Super Bowl contender that they've been, but weren't this year? Great players.
Of course.
Great players. It doesn't matter what position they play. You need great players. That's it. Now we can discuss it beyond that, of course, but they need great players. They need great players. Don't worry about getting somebody who's not quite this, not quite. Go for a great player. That's what the Lions are doing. I think the Lions are doing it better than anybody right now. James Foster says, Lowry, let me tell you about Trayvon Walker. Thank you. Daniel Fernandez says, Larry, you're the best. Love your show. Thank you. G Code Travels Vlog. Will Garendo split fullback snaps? Juice 1 year left. I'd make Garendo. I don't think Garendo is a natural running back. And you know how many balls he caught this year? 15. You know how many targets he had? 16. Yeah. He's really a good receiver. He's going to catch the ball. Throw him. When a guy catches 15 balls and 16 passes, that tells me he needs to be throwing the ball a lot more. How do you throw him the ball a lot more? You play him at fullback and you throw it to him in the flat. That's how you throw it to him more. I think he could be really, really dangerous as a fullback. And without Ayuk, they better start looking for really, really dangerous offensive weapons, because I'm looking around, I don't see any. Claudaddy Arcades is in the house. He says, agreed. If the Niners were to trade back twice in the first round, we acquired 3 extra picks this year, Christmas would come early. Welcome back and congrats, Deets.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I agree with Claudaddy. Trading back, get 3 extra picks, especially if a couple of them are day 2, especially if you have somebody in mind, if you have players in mind. I think the most exciting part about this live stream tonight was our conversation about Brady Cook, to be honest, because I think Brady Cook could be a real sleeper. MS says $1.99 Tyler Shugg. Okay, I mean, I like Tyler Shugg. He does throw a killer ball, but there's not a lot of mobility, and he has played 7 years of college ball.
It's such a ridiculous statement. 7 years of college ball.
That's a lot of college ball. About? I mean, I thought only guys from my fraternity went to college for 7 years.
It's unbelievable.
Ben Basinger.
AARP card, Kyle Schlaw.
College was the best decade of my life.
This dude's as old as me. Come on.
Benny says, here's 5 spot. Juice has no juice. He has to go. He doesn't put anyone in conflict.
Correct. I agree with that.
He puts me in conflict.
Well, except for it's now just conceptual conflict, which is the worst kind.
DC says, will Greenlaw be a 49er next year? If not, who should his replacement be? Do you guys think who do you think they're taking at 11? if I had to guess, I would say they're taking Membu at 11. And as far as who should be his replacement, I like David Benda. I like Chandler Martin. I like Demetrius Knight, and I love Eugene Asante. And I would try to get two of them, at least two of them.
Jamie Sherwood, Jets
Jamie
linebacker.
Sherwood in free agency. I'll throw another name. I like Willie Gay.
Yep.
Felix Williams says draft Landon Jackson, Arkansas, elite Crosby 2.0, played in the SEC. You know what? I'll say this, based on what I saw today, trading back from 11, not once, but twice into the 20s and drafting Landon Jackson might be one of my ideas.
Landon Jackson. I have a third round grade on Jackson. I like Landon Jackson a lot.
He's going to go higher than that.
He's got no hair and very few warts on his game, but there was
pretty big, pretty athletic.
Yeah, that's fine. The tape does not as much as someone is going to like him. Someone's going to buy in at the highest premium, and I can't get there with them. I think that second round is as early as I would go, and I'm talking late second round.
Yeah.
But he's a good player. He's a hell of a player, and if we were talking about him in rational terms, that would be a really good spot, somewhere around 50 to 70. I don't think we're talking rational after he ran fast.
Well, that's the thing. It's going to be, who's there in the second round? Is Shamar Stewart there? Possibly. Is Mike Green there? Possibly. Is Nick Scorton there? Possibly.
Mike
Kyle
Green,
Kennard is the.
Mike Green is not going to be there in the second.
Mike Green has had some off-field issues. He's had some off-field issues that are pretty serious. Kyle Kennard was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
I thought his workout today was good enough. I mean, he's unfortunately he rushes out of a 2-point stance, and I don't know if he can change that. But you mean like in the second round, I think you're staring at all these guys: Landon Jackson, Princely Umamamalian, Donovan Izaraku, JT Tuamolo from Ohio State, Jack Sawyer, Braden Swinson, Jordan Birch, Antoine Powell-Ryland, who I love a lot, Olufemi Oladejo, who I love a lot, Ashton Gelati, Barron Sorrell, Jared Ivey. All these guys, I think, are David Walker, Jod Joyner. I think they're all in that second through fourth range. And
you
second round,
you wait all of them out, and you take Fadil Diggs in the fifth round. That's what you do.
He had a good workout day.
He did,
all right. Let's see. Oh, we were going through the supers here. I think that was the last one. Was that it?
Okay. Yeah.
That was the last one. Okay, so give me your final shot of the night here. Do you have a player that you're super excited about in this draft that we haven't discussed that you'd like to throw out here? Because I definitely have one. I'll go first if you want more time.
Excited is not maybe the right word, but there is a level of convinced that I am about Jacob Parrish, a cornerback from Kansas State. He's just solid. He just looks like he knows what the hell he's doing out there. And there's some energy off of him that reminds me a lot of Renardo Green last year. Renardo Green was a divisive prospect. And my man Jake Hutchinson and I, Dieter and Hutch podcast, we were both, it was his find. I cross-checked it, and I'm like, dude, you're right. This guy's awesome. This guy's like a first-round player. And we would talk to people, or at least I'd talk to people around the league, and they're like, oh, Renardo Green's not very good. There's no flash. There's nothing there. Like, what are we chewing on? And it's like, why do we need flash? All he does is win. He just keeps winning reps. I don't care about flash. Jacob Parrish is kind of like that. He's great in supporting the run game.
He's not big. He's 5'10", 195. He's a nickel
corner. He plays
corner.
heavy. He plays heavy, and I think he could play on the outside.
Definitely.
And maybe this is just a bias towards actually seeing it at the college level, but he'll square his shoulders around and actually face you up and go man to man. And you watch his game against Arizona, and number 4 McMillan was in jail that entire game, to the point where they just had to route him away from the other guy. They were just doing everything they could to get him away from Jacob Parrish. We're talking about a round 3, early round 4 pick. And I know that the Niners maybe have their eyes set on bigger names, a bigger thing. But if the Niners went into next season, and I love a lot of safeties in this class, I think there's a lot of good options there. But if they go into next season with Renardo Green, Diamador Lenore, and Jacob Parrish as their cornerbacks, and they were able to use all of the money that they saved and all the draft capital that they didn't have to use on big-time players and other positions, man, they're going to be well-suited, not just this upcoming year, but for years to come. I'm just convinced on guys like C.J. West and Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State. Give them a watch.
I like it. Very strong player.
Yeah.
So I saw him make a couple solo tackles. He's
out
way
there ready to
stronger
hit.
than his size. I mean, you look at 5'10", 195, you're like, he's small, but you know what? This guy will starch you. He will absolutely step up and hit you. And he played a lot of man coverage. So I know I like that. It's a good one. We got this one from DC. Love Dieter's knowledge and takes. Keep it real. Keeps it real. Absolutely.
Got no other way to do it. Not smart enough to keep it unreal.
Life's too short. Okay, this is who I'm going with. A lot of people like the edge rusher from Central Arkansas, David Walker, and I like him a lot. And his workouts today made me even like him more. But there is another guy at Central Arkansas,
Scottie Pippen.
This guy, I'm always on the look for, the guy who's going to be, who's going to get you promoted. The guy, you draft this guy and everybody's like, you find the guy that, suddenly everybody says, I want to throw millions of dollars in that guy's lap and I want to give him total control of our football team because he saw something that nobody else saw.
Right.
Or got somebody who's super dynamic. Well, I'm always looking for dynamic. I found a dynamic player.
Who you got?
He is really good, underrated running back. He averaged 4.8 yards after contact per rush. That's first in his draft class among all the running backs. He averaged 0.42 missed tackles forced per rush. That's first among all the running backs in this draft class. He's got a 21.6 explosive run rate. That is first in this draft class. You got to adjust for the level of competition for sure because it is Central Arkansas, right?
Yeah, that's mid-level of the FCS.
Yeah. His name is Shunderick Powell.
That's right. You're not shunning Derek here.
Shunderick Powell. Shunderrick. Shunderick Powell. And dude, when you watch this guy, this guy, I mean, obviously wasn't invited to the combine, but lots of guys aren't.
Right.
This guy's explosive.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's like Tyreek Hill explosive. He's fast, really fast. So when I saw those numbers, I'm like, wow. So he forces the most missed tackles. He's got the most yards after contact, and he's also got an explosive run rate that's number one. I got to see this guy. I went and did a deep dive as deep as I could. Only found like 5 or 6 films on him and I watched him. Explosive.
If you need someone to kick Austin Peay's ass, have I got the guy for you? Shunderick Powell went for 173.
Shunderick Powell. I actually saw an Austin Peay linebacker named Bo Spearman this week. That's really pretty good.
That is. I mean,
Bo Spearman. Yeah, but Shunderick Powell.
Tartleston State didn't know what hit him.
We got this one.
Nor did Abilene Christian.
Felix Williams, maybe hearing that, just said, "Hey, deuce." There you go. Thank you, Felix. Dieter, when do you appear next on the leader? When what would you like to promote? I know you do your pod
Dieter and Hutch pod. Check it out, subscribe, do all that. I'm going to be up in about 4 hours here, but not to
draft guide coming.
Draft guide's coming. Yeah, we have the draft guide coming. Excited for that. Not actually excited for that. It's a tremendous amount of work that I shouldn't.
Huge amount of work.
Yeah, that was really stupid.
When is it coming? Well, I'll buy it. How much is it?
It will. All you have to do is become a member on the Dieter and Hutch YouTube page, and it comes as a member perk. and it will come before the draft. That's all I'm promising. Well before. We're not going to dick you around. It'll be there. I think we got about a month left here, and then I'll be dead. So that should be fun. And then I'll be on the leader tomorrow night because I'm a masochist. That is the official.
Tomorrow night at 7.
Tomorrow night at 7. I will have a lead-in of questionable quality, but we'll make it work.
That does it. That'll be me leading in tomorrow night with Niners Nightly. All right, that does it for us. Thanks to Dieter. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate every single one of you. Please hit like and subscribe. Please go over to Dieter's channel and give him a like and subscribe.
Do what you want. Live your life. Be free.
Give everybody a like and subscribe, damn it.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you